In the grand hall, a young boy stares at his brand new power, and one thought slams into his mind: is this garbage? His dismay practically hits you in the face. Everyone around him is snickering because he can only conjure weeds, like that's a joke, while a young girl named Latina stands beside him, eyes huge with worry, whispering his name left. His thoughts slip away from the moment, and he's dragged back into another life, one that ends so small it feels like a single weed, replayed as a sprawling modern city beneath a night sky with no stars at all. In his past life, he lay bleeding out on a cold, unforgiving floor, helpless and shaking, staring at dandelions turned to seed as he fought. The terrifying thought: was this really the end? As his life slipped away, one regret stabbed him. Then a shadowy figure hovered over his fading body, voice oozing with condescension as they taunted, "So the fun times are over." The last thing he ever caught was a revolver spelled out in that final voice, crushed with disappointment. Then his last breath slips away, and with it, the memory crumbles, only for him to jerk awake and realize he's alive, kneeling in a field packed with flowers, staring at his tiny hands like, wait, where am I? He crawls toward a nearby pool, leans in and stares at his reflection. Only it isn't him at all. A young blonde kid's face stares back, and the shock hits like a tidal wave, washing every thought clean. The haze finally starts to lift, and a name crawls up from his new mind. He remembers it all, now he's left Austria. He stands before a towering mansion, fully aware of his fate, third son of the Baron, yet still carrying every memory from his past life in Japan, where he fought for survival with everything he had, and now those two separate minds collide into one terrifying, unsettling reality. He stands in his family's pristine estate garden, lost in quiet thoughts, until a familiar voice bursts in, asking if he's napping there again. That Latina's voice hits like a spark. She bursts in with pure energy, declares she's back to play today, and basically orders him to be loudly, painfully grateful for her showing up. Latina Venom. His eldest daughter, a Latina by blood and a Viscount by family, has been his fiancée since they were both 3, and she's also the only friend their age he can stand, so she perks up and asks, "What are we playing today?" and suggests house, but the moment she does, he lets out a tired, weary sigh. He asks if they could maybe try something new for once, but she shuts him down hard, saying this rehearsal is for their future, and not every married couple survives on good terms. She snatches his hand and yanks him forward, telling him not to be shy and to sit down. He hesitates, then gives a reluctant, quiet, okay. Their house game kicks off with pure chaos through her doll. The Latina fires a dramatic accusation that his doll handed out gifts to another woman, and she announces she's calling off their engagement. Then his doll bursts in, shouting that his dirty deeds stop right here. And when he answers through his own doll, all he can manage is stunned confusion. He has no idea any of it happened. She keeps spinning this wild setup, saying the other woman wore a limited edition bracelet you could only get at their local town store, and she swears Butler dug the receipt out of his own drawer and even called the shop to confirm it. While inside, Lev can't stop staring at how painfully real the whole thing feels for a game an 8-year-old is playing. Cornered by the evidence, his doll blurts out in pure disbelief, and Latina's doll snaps back, accusing him of timing her, totally sweeping him into the mess. Lev's doll then panics, apologizes nonstop, and swears he'll stop flirting before lifting the doll up high and declaring that next time, Ware, his love will be devoted only to Latina, making her beam like she just won the world. The performance drains him to the bone. He collapses face down on a cushion while Latina can't stop smiling, gushing that his acting has leveled up even as her own heart pounds. And as their dolls chatter, they say the play's turned way too mature, then tease that the next stop will be all about adultery. With a dead serious glare, she snaps that playing house isn't just a game while he clutches his doll. One thought pounds in his head: it's still just playing house. He froze when she spoke next, those wide, sincere eyes locking onto his, as the Latina confessed she wanted to stay close to him forever. She then snapped into her intense logic, lifting a doll like it was proof, and declared that playing house is a serious mission because her plan is to foresee every marital problem before it hits, solve it early, and keep any real blow-ups from ever happening. He just stood there, totally stunned by her sharp, way too bright logic, and he muttered her name like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Even with his shock, he caught himself nodding along. Yeah, he wanted a peaceful marriage too. He promised he'd give it his all in their game, and the second he spoke, Latina's face lit up with a bright, happy smile. He finally understood Latina's passion wasn't some game at all. It was fueled by real, deep thought about their shared future. So yeah, their oddly mature playing house kept rolling along, and when he admitted that thought, it made him happy too. On this huge day, he left behind his younger years, now dressed in sharp formal wear, and strode forward with pure dignity. Watchers whispered in awe, praising his poise and shouting that he was the prodigy, the star of the event. His father, Count Austria, soaks in the praise as everyone gushes about the boy's ridiculously high magical power, and you can practically feel their excitement in the air while Left watches it all, knowing full well they're just trying to win his approval. Just then a familiar voice rings out. Latina, dressed to steal the spotlight, charges toward him and blurts out, all excited, "Did you get my gift yet?" Watching her close in, he can't help but think, warm and fond, she's insanely cute. He grins warmly at Latina, praising how perfectly her formal dress fits. She's so shocked to see him that she can only blurt, "Let me." Her cheeks blaze deep red as she blurts out, "He's totally adorable." She's hit with instant embarrassment and snaps her head away from him, and he blurts her name in pure confusion, completely thrown off by her sudden outburst. As her father finally steps in, her attitude makes sense. He scolds her hard for running around inside the church, calls it unladylike, and demands she act polite. And Latina drops her gaze, swallowing her pride as she whispers a meek apology. As he watches it all unfold, he remembers just how brutally strict Latina's parents are about her education, and how the only real joy in her life is the time she gets to spend playing at his place. He stares into the future and promises himself this: once she becomes his wife, she'll step into his family's world with a smile glued to her face, and he'll do whatever it takes for her. Still, he prays this ceremony brings him the right gift. Just then, his thoughts get yanked away when his father tells him to calm down, then drags him toward the altar and calls him up. With a jolt of purpose, he drops to his knees before the massive crystal on the altar, hands clasped tight as he pours out his prayers. When he's done, the priest whips his gaze from the orb to the boy, eyes blazing with shock, and starts announcing the result. Glowing letters burst to life inside the crystal, and the priest blasts the words out loud for everyone to hear, like an encyclopedia of plants coming straight from magic. That bizarre gift sends everyone into a frenzy, so much so that the priest admits he's never laid eyes on anything like it before. Left's father starts wondering if it's some kind of secret the church doesn't even know, while his mother can't stop asking if it's a one-of-a-kind miracle. As he just stood there, stunned by the new gift, the crowd started buzzing about what it all meant. Latina's father bragged that only a rare kind of gift like this could perfectly fit as a future husband, and her mother nodded along, saying high magical power always leads to something extraordinary. Latina herself just shrugged, taking it all in like, of course, this was exactly what a prodigy would pull off. That talk made it hit hard. This blessing ceremony wasn't just a ritual. It could set your whole future in motion. A gift that was truly powerful could light the way to an amazing life. But if it fell short, the road ahead suddenly turned brutal. With the stakes crystal clear, he strode up to the altar, hope blazing in his chest as he waited for a truly special blessing. His hopeful excitement crashed into a wave of confusion because the priest leaned in and asked straight up if he truly understood what his plant encyclopedia gift was, and he said yes without hesitation. These gifts have a strange pull where the owner just knows how to use them. And right then, like a miracle, the encyclopedia was already in his hands. He flipped open the thin ornate book he found, and the moment he did, he thought, wait for an encyclopedia. This thing is shockingly thin. Even though it looked huge, he decided to go for it. He cracked the book open and found every page packed with razor-detailed illustrations of plants. As he stared at the entry, a whisper of light sparked from his hand. Then a tiny three-leaf plant blinked into existence out of thin air, hovering over his palm, and the priest jolted back, shouting, "What is that?" He calmly named it a common weed, then said the encyclopedia could let him summon any plant. He saw no exceptions, and the priest's thoughts spun out of control as his voice cracked with awe. So you could even conjure those legendary elixir ingredients like that fabled divine grass. He snatched the book again and flipped through the pages at lightning speed. Then his face fell as he delivered the worst news. The divine grass wasn't even listed in the encyclopedia, so he couldn't create it. The priest hummed like he was wrestling fate. Then his thoughts snapped to a new angle. He leaned in and asked if the book at least listed the high-grade herbs needed to brew advanced potions. Lev tore through his encyclopedia in panic, praying there'd be some herb worth taking, while the priest leaned in and shoved him, demanding to know if even low-grade herbs showed up. When the blank stared back, Lev swallowed his growing dread and had to admit they weren't listed in one last desperate burst of hope, he forced a single tiny plant into existence. It popped onto the pedestal beside the crystal ball, just some plain weed. The priest stared at it, eyes locked, and the silence that followed felt heavier than stone. A quiet breath slipped out of him. Then it hit. The full weight of what was happening finally slammed into his mind. His eyes snapped wide with shock as a chorus of whispers exploded from the crowd behind him. From the gallery, the other nobles started to mutter under their breath. Latina's parents snapped their disappointment, saying all that hype only left the Allstree family looking utterly pitiful. Latina's father grabbed her by the arm like lightning struck, announcing they were walking out. Then he would make it official to all stories that the engagement was dead, and Latina just stood there frozen, staring at her father's sudden decision. As her father yanked her away, she lunged for him with one outstretched hand, her face torn between shock and furious protest. His parents scooted in close, his mom crushing him in a tight hug, his dad laying a calming hand on his head. But the harm was already there, done and irreversible. From that day on, the whole town started whispering his name like a tragedy, and he became nothing more than an object of pity. His gift, once a spark of hope, turned into a brand on his life. And now people only saw him as a weed user with that cruel truth staring him down. The big question of what he'd do next hung there unanswered. In the estate gardens, Austria lingers over his cyclopedia, matching a flower to its picture. Then click, he conjures the bloom into being with a satisfied grin, bragging that it's the 7th plant he's created this way. Later, perched at his desk packed with specimens, he calls for his headmaid, Kira. She shows up instantly and demands more paper so he can dry his latest finds. Kira nods, asks if he dug up another new plant from his book, and he grins, confirming he did. She's amazed by the huge pile of plants he's hauled in such a short time, but his bright smile slips as he stares at the ground, realizing deep down that he's had more free time ever since Latina stopped coming around. He gives her a quiet nod, trying to ease the pain, and Kyra jumps in, saying Lady Latina is probably just tied up with something else. Then he spots the familiar carriage outside Latina's family ride right as he leans in to look, and before he can react, a hand clamps onto his and yanks him back. It's Latina. He jerks in surprise, staring at her as she presses a finger to her lips and demands silence. Then she whispers that she's come to see him in secret, leaving him scrambling to figure out why she's hiding. She tells him her butler was so thoughtful that he let her ride along with him in the carriage. Her face crumples as she drops the devastating news right then. She tells him her parents are probably already telling his parents they're calling off the engagement. The memory of their fathers locked in a stiff, formal meeting hits him like a wave, and Latina adds the final blow. Now he's flat out forbidden from ever contacting her. She tells Left her father is a ruthless meritocracy tyrant who refuses to bend, so the idea hits her like poison, and her stomach turns. With hands that shake, she forces the words out even though they won't get to see each other for a while. She falters, then cuts herself off, leaving Left frozen in stunned silence. She flashed back to a happier day, sitting across from Latina while he grinned and asked what she wanted to do for fun. With a tear slipping down her cheek, she shut down their usual game of playing house and swore that today she'd do whatever he wanted. Thrilled by her answer, he blurted that they'd go plant hunting, and through the nearby window his parents and even the head watched them run and play. His father joked that Lev could grow up to be a plant researcher, while his mother nodded and accepted an offer from Ortiz. His mother sighed that all she could do was stretch the time she had left with both kids, and his father nodded, saying they'd come to treat Latina like she was family. While they hunted for it, she jabbed a finger at a picture in his plant encyclopedia and begged to see that gorgeous white grass nax. He pointed it out as snow cotton grass, then rattled off why it only grows in freezing weather, basically killing their chances of finding it right now. Latina just hung on every word. She couldn't help thinking how brilliant Lef was with his rare gift. But the moment she remembered the one her father craved pure, straightforward strength, her mood soured. That memory snapped her back to the present, because now her father's rage would block them from even seeing each other. Panic clawed at her chest, and she hated herself for the jealous thought that some other girl would definitely snatch away a boy this wonderful and leave her with nothing. He spotted the pain in her eyes, murmured her name like a lifeline, and yanked her out of that spiral before it swallowed her whole. In his open palm, he conjured the exact flower from her memories, the snow flare, snow, and cotton grass, and thrust it toward her, leaving her frozen in total shock. She stared at the flower in her palm, stunned, and blurted out, if he'd found it. Then he shook his head and told her the truth. He didn't discover it at all. He just materialized it straight out of his encyclopedia. Right as she began pouring magic into creation, a man in a butler's uniform dashed in and called out to her. Then she beamed back, thanked him with a bright grin, and told him the flower was beautiful. Right when they finally got to each other, the head maid barged in, bowed with an apology, and declared it was time to get back to the carriage leaving. Left staring in stunned dismay as their time together got yanked away. Just as she started to drift away, he blurted her name with pure desperation, begging them to play again right then. Latina froze and turned back, her face heavy with sadness. His desperate plea hit her like a wave, and tears sprang to her eyes, yet through all that heartbreak, she flashed a hopeful smile and swore to him they'd make it, no doubt. With that promise sealed, she spun on her heel, climbed into the carriage, and for a brief second her sorrowful face flashed in the window before the carriage jerked forward and disappeared. Left stared as it vanished, mouth moving in silent apologies, while his mom turned to Sebastian the butler and thanked him for bringing her son. He just smiled back, saying it was his pleasure. Inside the rolling carriage, Latina finally understood one terrifying truth. If this keeps going, she'll never see her way back to freedom. So she grabbed her maid and demanded what she should do. The maid didn't sugarcoat it. Latina had to break free of her father's protection first, and that meant power and money. Latina swallowed her fear, then vowed to get what she needed herself, and her maid was convinced she'd make it happen. Back at his place, Left froze in front of the creepy doll that looked like a Latina, and it hit him like a punch. She was gone. His little shadow sprawled across the floor, showing just how alone he'd become. Alone in the pitch dark of an empty room, he drowned in loneliness. Then a young woman with wavy hair slipped into the doorway and demanded, "Why are you sitting here in the dark?" He stares down at a tiny homemade doll, and sorrow hits his face hard while his parents stand right behind him, trying to pull him back from the edge. His mom cupping his head and whispering that gifts don't matter, because he's always been, and always will be, their precious son. Overwhelmed by their kindness, he snaps and bursts into tears, gripping the doll so tight it's like it's his lifeline. While his parents stand there with solemn eyes, and in that quiet moment, he swears silently to grow into someone great, someone they'll be proud to call their son. A month slips by after the blessing ceremony, and in that time he obsessively dries and presses the paper, getting it ready for something big. He sits there, paging through the plant encyclopedia, realizing he's already found every plant the book lists that can grow in their garden except the ones locked behind the season, and that's when it hits him. Finishing his divine gift just means waiting for time to catch up, and it feels weirdly anticlimactic. Then it clicks. Boom! A jarring thought slams him right in the head. Could his encyclopedia only know the plants growing in their garden? And the realization hits like a revelation, sharp and sudden. A wild new chance sparks inside him, and he practically rockets out of his seat, electrified by the thought. He rockets out of the room, shouting for the head maid, Kira, and demands she bring him something right now, immediately. He flips through his encyclopedia again, and man, compared to the thick botanical tomes people buy here, his book feels way too thin, and that tiny detail supercharges his new theory. What would happen if you stumbled into a plant that refuses to grow anywhere in their garden? He remembers the priest's sermon, how God's blessing is the secret ingredient for elixirs, and how high-grade medicinal herbs are non-negotiable too. Anik at the door shoots a signal. Kira's back. He calls out, "Master." and hands her a small basket, telling her she's brought the low-grade medicinal herb he asked for. Kara eagerly says thank you and takes it right away. He hustles back to his room and slams the basket of fresh herbs onto his desk like it's his next big move. In the dead quiet of the room, he stands at the desk, eyes locked in, mind racing toward the experiment about to happen. He cradles his plant encyclopedia right by the herbs, staring it down like it owes him an answer. Then he snaps to the conclusion that nothing's happening just from watching, so he pushes on with more tests. He realizes even with a plan in hand, just staring at it changes nothing, so he grabs it and decides to touch it straight on. With a steady hand, he reaches out and carefully lays his fingertips on the medicinal herb. The instant his skin touches, his eyes snap wide with pure shock. That crappy medicinal herb is suddenly gone from the desk, and he jerks his eyes down. His encyclopedia has been freshly updated. The page count jumped up, like it literally just grew. He succeeded, and right after he pulls off the win, a wild new feeling hits. Magic starts bleeding out of his body, gathering into a blazing orb of light in his hand. The light snaps into place, rebuilding the exact herb that had just vanished, and when he sees it, shock hits him hard as he blurts out for his father and mother right away. He storms into his parents' room, hoisting the brand new plan overhead, and blurts out that he's got to tell them something and that he needs to ask them for something too. From a secret spot above, the watcher stared down at the town square, eyes locked on a tiny figure across the way. Yeah, it was that kid they'd been seeing nonstop lately. The observer kept his eyes locked on the scene, and down in the square the townsfolk huddled in low whispers, spotting the boy alone again. Wondering why he even showed up, a cold look twisted the observer's face as he decided the truth. The kid was just a weed user and nothing more than someone wasting time. He mulled over the title, chin-tapping as he mouthed "weed user" under his breath, while an older man nearby stared jaw-dropping like he'd just seen a ghost. The gossip crowd had no idea, but this young guy had caught something deeper, because he'd uncovered the encyclopedia's real power. One Lefkari never even realized. As Leftostereo trudged through town alone, people stared and whispered behind him, calling him a weed user and swearing even his own family must have thrown him away. Even so, he's clearly having the time of his life, quiet determination burning beneath the smile. He thinks of his parents, praying they'll finally see what his hands can do now. He thrusts his hands toward his parents, and a weak medicinal herb pops out in a burst of light. His mom and dad go wide-eyed. She remembers Kyra, the head maid, was just about to pass by. Without missing a beat, Lef swings open a bag packed to the brim with the very same plants. He boasts that he made every single one just moments ago. Then after digging into it, he tells his father one herb only needs 124 magic power to materialize, so now he can mass produce them like crazy. Count Austria is stunned by the revelation, so he instantly storms to the church priest, ready to declare himself Venom family and spill everything, sure it'll smash Lef's evaluation and save the engagement. But Lef snaps in with urgency, shutting him down. We don't need to do any of that. The Count grills his son about his hesitation, insisting this wild skill is something everyone should learn, until Lef cuts in with a hard warning: if the real power of his ability gets out, there'll be people scrambling to abuse it. His father hesitates, torn wide open between chasing his ambition and worrying about his son, and Lef clocks it instantly. This is kindness in its raw form. Then Lef delivers his choice. He doesn't care what malice anyone else has. He's keeping his power locked down, secret, and shared only between them. His mom shifts the mood and bluntly asks if he's really okay with losing Latina. And he just smiles, saying it's totally fine because in their dollhouse games, they've already survived tons of marital crisis plot lines, even cheating and secret conspiracies, leaving his parents staring in shock. He brushes off the concern with a sly smile. Sure, this is just another crisis and that Latina feels it the same way too. Meanwhile, over on her side, Latina sits quietly while her butler, Sebastian, pours her tea, her face locked in deep thought. In her own house, every sign lines up. Latina snaps into focus, determined to power up and top the entrance exam, while the other him, just as stubborn, digs in his heels and swears he'll be okay, promising he'll come for her no matter what. With gratitude on his tongue, the boy's father paused, then nodded and promised to keep his power hidden. No questions. The man also figured out what came next. If the boy wanted to crack that plant encyclopedia, he'd have to verify different plants one by one. Left didn't hesitate. He blurted aloud, excited, yes. His father tried to play it helpful, offering to gather every useful plant he could, but he politely shut that down and said it wasn't needed, then asked for something else, full permission to head into town alone. His request finally got granted, so he stepped out with servants on a few trips, checked the town himself, and they all agreed on one thing. The main street was safe enough for a kid to walk it alone. Once the area was declared safe, he was finally cleared to roam solo only in daylight and only for a ruthless 3-hour window. He counted the 6 silver coins his father had slipped into his hands as plain old pocket money. And honestly, it was a fortune, since 1 coin alone could fund 2 nights in a sketchy little cheap end inn. He cooked up a plan, sure his father had slipped him extra money for buying plants. Then he decided to use 5 silver coins to sign up for an adventure, sell a pouch of his conjured medicinal herbs to the guild, and use that cash to grab whatever plants he'd need for the encyclopedia, because his mind was set. Then he marched straight for the Adventurers Guild. The second he stepped inside, hostility hit him like a slap. An angry Mohawk dude behind the counter sneered and snapped, asking when the place turned into a daycare, and a bunch of burly adventurers piled on, telling the boy the guild wasn't for brats and he better get back home to his mom. The moment it hit, he froze, sweat instantly beading on his cheek as he realized the harassment started from the very beginning. The insults kept raining down, and one of the men even told him crassly to go ask his father, and Lef could only think, what an insanely stupid thing to say. Even with all that attitude, he clocked their gear, real gear, so these guys had to be serious adventurers. One of them snapped that he was in the wrong building and told him to go home. Lef didn't flinch. He met their eyes head on and hit them with a rock-solid line. I came here to register as an adventurer. He planted his feet and roared that he wouldn't budge until his registration was done, no matter what, and the adventurers froze in shock at his nerve, one even snickering that the kid was just a shrimp. His stare hit like a flashbang, so sharp it made the men jerk back, clap a hand over their eyes, and wonder what the heck was wrong with that kid. The afro-wearing man decided to try a new angle and told the stubborn boy to just quit, claiming a shrimp couldn't possibly handle adventuring. Lef shot back that he only wanted to register for now, not jump into activities right away, and asked straight up, is there a problem with that? The Mohawk sporting adventurer slammed down the truth. If a shrimp like him got to register, it would drag every adventurer's status through the mud. Lef didn't blink and fired back, asking how a single child registration could possibly downgrade anyone's rank, but his sharper tort only pissed the men off more. They claimed he had a smart mouth. Right as the fight started to spiral, the adventurers spotted their leader and shouted, "Big bro, Abuchi!" A huge, scarred brute stepped up, and the whole scene instantly bent to his will. Then he barked the same insult back. "Little shrimp, you say?" While Lef realized even more of them had just slid into view. The leader's eyes snapped into focus. I've seen you," he growled. Then one of his men rushed in to say the tiny boy was ignoring every warning and still trying to register as an adventurer. He pointed to the left and nailed them as the weed user, the kid whose gift only ever churned out weeds, and with a sharp wave of his hand, he told them to scram, smugly insisting the world of adventurers was too wild for someone like him to deal with. When the order hit, Lef didn't hesitate. He snapped back with one cold, unshakable word, no. His stubborn defiance froze the adventurer leader. Then the boy blurted out, breathless and fired up, that he'd finally won permission to go out alone and had trekked all this way, swearing he wasn't turning back now. The leader's shock snapped into rage. "You," he snarled, yanking his hand toward the boy. "Are you mocking us?" A giant hand slammed shut on the boy's small wrist, and the left's eyes shot up in shock as a calm new voice remarked on how an adult had cornered a child. From behind them, a calm voice cut right through the tension, asking Abuchi if he was actually having fun. The bullies' faces snapped into shock the second they recognized the newcomer, and a terrifying aura seemed to pour off him. The newcomer, a young man named Helio, flicked his hand like it meant nothing, cutting off the bigger guy with an annoyed little sound. Abuchi flinched like he'd been hit, totally rattled by Helio and the girl at his side. Abuchi's body flooded with cold sweat as the danger hit him. This was bad news, and he knew it, because he spotted Helio and Mira too. The chaos immediately snapped the guild receptionist to attention. She strode up and flat out ordered Mr. Ibuchi to stop bullying the newcomers and to unregister everyone he'd been messing with. Her scolding hit like a slap, and the two adventurers' sheer presence made everyone freeze. Ibuchi clicked his tongue and barked at his man to get out. Fast. Once the threat vanished, Helio spun left, ruffled his head, and demanded to know why adults would bully a kid, while Left looked up at his rescuer and whispered a simple thank you. He burst into a wide, fierce but kind grin, showing those sharp little canines, and admitted that Left had been in a real mess while the young man's blazing red hair and slick, confident style just stole the show. He kept gushing, patted Left's head again, and called him amazing for taking on 4 bigger men without even flinching, and even though they'd just met, Left still felt weirdly at ease around him, even as the compliments left him flustered. The boy's shock instantly turned into real admiration. His cheeks flared red as he thanked Helio again, blurting that Helio was unbelievably cool, and Helio's smile warmed up in response. Later, behind the counter, the receptionist sighed to Helio that Mr. Ibuchi's constant interference was choking the new registrations. Then Helio nodded, glanced to the left, and said, "Looks like a promising one just walked in." He listened hard, catching every whisper and rumor about the red-haired Helio. And suddenly, the legend snapped into his mind, the famed adventurer party, Fire Dragon Strike, led by a confident, dark-haired man, the group hailed as the fastest ever to climb their rank to be. With rumors flying everywhere, Helio whipped his head to Mira and asked, right there, whether Ria should show up. Mira nodded without hesitation. Helio couldn't help but brag about how they'd built a solid, rising reputation, and he even nailed their party name, Fire Dragon Strike. With that, she decided to go get her, then said it plain and sharp, she'd fetch Ria herself. She slipped out to the bedroom door, leaned over the huge bed, and shouted to her teammate Ria, "Wake up! We've got a client meeting, and we're on the clock." Ria blinked awake under the covers. Then the first thing out of her mouth was, "Is the client cute?" Myra cut in fast. "Nope, it's a chubby old man." Ria heard it and face-planted onto the bed with a groan, insisting she wasn't going anywhere Mira's side inside. Resignation settling over her as she realized this plan was doomed from the start, and the next time they'd meet still hung in the air, unsure. At the Adventurers Guild, Mira the receptionist grips the moment and tells Left she's already got his 5 silver coins for registration, then points to a glowing magical device on the counter and orders, "Put your hand on it." Helio stands right behind him as the boy reaches forward, and he blurts out, "Can I get in too?" The moment his hand hits the device, it crackles to life and spits out a card, and Left just stares wide-eyed, stunned by how that magical machine worked. Mira shoves the brand-new adventurer card into his hands and warns, "Don't you dare lose this." She explains the guild can print a spare, but his card matters, so with the thing gripped tight in his palm, Left breaks into a happy grin and agrees. Registration wrapped up, and then she turns to Left and asks what he really knows about what adventurers do. He slips and admits he's only heard of monster hunts and cave exploring, but he's clueless about the details. Mira points him and Helio toward a giant bulletin board and gives a quick, clear rundown how adventurers pick requests that come with a suggested rank and a deadline, then submit the forms at reception, that you can even team up into parties, and that if you miss the deadline, you're hit with a penalty. He leans in, staring at a ranking system that goes from F all the way up to S, and it hits him like a punch. His adventure career starts at the very bottom, an F-rank adventurer. Mira finishes her rundown in front of the quest board and leans in, asking if he wants to know anything else, or if the guild has anything else for him to handle. Seizing the moment, Left yanks open his satchel and blurts that he's selling low-grade medicinal herbs, then slams them into view by the pile, leaving Mira to stare in disbelief at 55 massive bundles. Once the shock fades, Mira snaps back into pro mode and tells Left, "We'll count the herbs, figure the payment, then settle up." But first, she asks him to hang on for a second while she processes the transaction. While he waits, Left can't help thinking, 55 bundles. That's a huge load for child, and nobody's even batting an eye. He figures this is just how the Adventurers Guild runs. Right then, Helio cuts in asking if Left plans to stick with him until the very end, since Helio's only here because it's his day off. He tailed his guide straight through the Adventurers Guild, thanking them as he went, and then he caught whispers from other adventurers once again, calling him the weed user with a little resignation sinking in. His guide, Helio, whipped around with a curious look and demanded, "How old are you?" And when the kid calmly said 10, it totally shook the older adventurer. Helio's eyes snapped wide with disbelief. He just couldn't match the kid's tender age with that brutal, contempt-filled glare he'd seen earlier. And it didn't add up in his head. Meanwhile, Left only turned and met him with a bright, innocent smile. Seeing Helio's shock, he froze and couldn't help thinking, "Man, my guide's genuinely kind." Then Mira, the receptionist, hurried back to the counter, breathless and sorry about the delay, and said the 55 bundles of low-grade medicinal herbs would go for 2 copper coins per bundle. Mira quickly tallied everything, declared it added up to 1 gold and 1 silver, then slid the payment onto a tray, leaving Left's eyes bulging with pure disbelief at the shockingly huge sum. Before Helio could even take it all in, he leaned in, jabbed a finger at the tray, and told Mira in a calm voice that she'd slipped in 3 gold coins because it definitely wasn't just the one she'd claimed. Then he swung left and broke down the mismatch because that guild member had already stirred trouble for the boy earlier, so they'd bumped it up a little as compensation. Left gasped and jabbed a finger at the numbers. This payment was more than double the original. Mira shrugged like she didn't know anything, then played dumb. When Left pressed her on whether it was really okay, Helio leaned in and reassured him. New adventurers always need a mountain of money to kick things off. He took the generous payment with a nod, still stunned, and decided he'd grab every bit he could. Then a huge smile burst across his face when he realized he could buy even more plants now. Across the guild hall, the dark-haired adventurer's eyes snapped sharper with every beat, and the guy beside him leaned in to hiss, "You hear that Heiso 3 gold coins?" He's saying. Heiso just stayed silent, jaw set, staring like he was locking onto something only he could see. He nods like, "Yep, I've got it." And right as Mira whirls around to yell for Helio, she declares her win too. That awkward exchange leaves the Left guy stammering out a confused question, while a flustered Mira snaps, "What do you mean, Hiso?" With a sly grin, Hiso chuckles that he didn't realize Mira could play receptionist so perfectly. He keeps talking, saying that with her party, when that fire dragon strikes, she's usually way more relaxed, and as Helio closes in, he admits it's only because they've been together forever, and Hiso finally seems to buy it. With a bright grin and a thumbs up, he declares that Myra's tough, resolute vibe from earlier is straight up cool and that he's genuinely into it. Hearing that praise, Left's eyes spark with a sudden, mischievous idea. Then the compliment hits Mira like a lightning bolt, and she blurts out nothing but stammering, face burning red as she can't even get a single word out. She stumbles over her words, says she feels good about everyone in their party, and when Hiso shrugs that off so casually, Mira finally snaps. She digs up her courage and straight up confesses that, yeah, she likes him too. Still, just after she confesses to Hiso, her eyes slide away and she murmurs Helio's name so softly it almost disappears. After watching the whole explosive exchange unfold, Left threw his fist up in silent victory, bursting with joy that Mira finally got her confession out. Iso beams at her with a warm, friendly grin. Then he thanks her and happily promises that he'll make sure everyone else hears about it. His totally clueless answer leaves Left reeling in shock, while Mira just stares ahead, utterly deadpan and heartbroken. He froze in stunned silence, not able to believe Hiso still missed Myra's confession, while Mira, clearly shaken, pushed out a fragile smile and thanked him for coming, then waved goodbye with a wish for his safe trip home, and all he could manage was a shaky, stammered yes. Right as he stood there, a voice barked at him to wait, Helio. He said they'd leave together, and the moment he heard it, he scanned the area with a grim, serious look. His eyes flicked across the crowd, then snapped back to the left, and the boy instantly understood why he needed an escort. The man had 3 gold coins in his hand. The adventurer shot him an apology, begged Left to stick with him for a bit, and told him to clamp down on his bag tight. But Left was totally confused because why would Helio help him after straight up calling him a weed user? He quickly clocked that standing beside Helio. Felt nothing like he expected, nothing but trouble. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught other men staring, and their faces burned with envy. As they walked, Helio leaned in and asked if Left understood what a weed user meant. Left's mind raced, weighing what to confess. Yeah, he knew it was about him, but he clammed up anyway because spilling details about the plant encyclopedia felt way too risky, even if Helio seemed like a genuinely good guy. Helio said that word was a cruel jab that was born right out of the blessing ceremony because the special skill he got in return did barely anything. The crowd groaned in disappointment, and Helio summed it up perfectly. It wasn't praise at all. It was basically a vicious insult. With a sly grin, he noticed Lef getting insulted, and somehow the kid didn't look even a little bothered, so he went straight for the truth, asking whether Lef had already cooked up some kind of workaround for his skill. Lef stared, stunned by the adventurer's razor-sharp insight, and deep down, he realized this kind of perception was exactly what you'd expect from someone at the very top. He confessed he'd just cracked how to use it right, and Helio grinned because the answer felt perfectly logical, like there was no way a one-of-a-kind skill could be totally useless. He tells them he has to swing by a shop stocked with medicinal herbs and plants, and Helio instantly nods along. He even suggests a general store he trusts, then offers to take him there himself. The moment they walk in, an older woman behind the counter lets out a dry little remark that Helio, yes, the noisy one has finally shown up. Helio snaps back, hits her with a noisy, and announces he's brought a customer. But the woman immediately swivels her focus to the small boy right beside him. Her eyes slice over him, clocking his spotless leather boots in the fancy bag he's hauling. Silent judgment, sharp and steady, like she's measuring his every move. She wraps up her assessment, and even though she can't pin down which young master he is, she knows one thing for sure: this guy's loaded. With that thought, she shuts down her complaint and decides he's a customer. She sweeps a hand across her shop, beckoning him to take his time and browse. Once he's given the okay, Lef's eyes flare with pure shock and awe. Those shelves are packed with countless ingredients, and the moment he realizes he can pick anything he wants, excitement hits him like lightning. He drifts through the store with pure awe on his face, while the shopkeeper watches from behind the counter, grinning like he already knows exactly what's going on. His excitement crashes the moment reality hits. He spots top-tier medicinal herbs he desperately wants. But one quick glance at his money shows he's got only 12 coins, and the whole dream of grabbing whatever he wants shatters instantly. After picking everything he wants, he marches up to the counter with a basket in hand, tells the shopkeeper, "Get me 5 plants and 2 antidote potions," and drains almost every last coin. Then the shopkeeper girl stares at his haul and asks what a young boy even plans to do with all that. He plays dumb, saying his mom just told him to run a quick errand, but the shopkeeper squints at him like, a simple errand, because the way he's buying everything looks far too intense. He stormed out with the shop owner's smile blazing behind him, and as she warmly begged him to return, a fresh vow slammed into him: never ever misuse this power. He clutched his new purchase tight, already imagining the moment he'd add these plants to his encyclopedia, because he knew one wrong materialization could land the kind old lady in serious trouble and even wreck the local economy. Right after they stepped outside, Helio flashed a grateful smile and thanked him for sticking around, saying it was his day off now. So all that was left was to head left home until he admitted he still had to meet his party at the end to talk about a request for tomorrow. Then, out of nowhere, a wild idea hit him. He invited Lef to come along, and the poor kid nearly froze from surprise. Helio brushed off Lef's hesitation in an instant, grinning as he insisted this wasn't some stuffy, formal affair, then leaned in with a confident smile and told him it would be better if Lef came along. Lef stood there, utterly baffled, thinking, how could I possibly help? Helio just shrugged and reassured him his presence would matter a lot. Once everything was settled, Helio barreled in and shoved the door open, shouting to make sure everyone was there, while Lef trotted after him, ready to help in any way he could. Inside, he so dark-haired and sharp bombarded Helio with a single question: why was the kid here? Mira, the bob-haired woman, snapped that everyone was accounted for except Rhea. Panic fluttered in the room, and Lef blurted his name fast, saying Helio had helped him back when he was still figuring everything out. He bowed low, admitting he had come along just to watch and asking them to treat him kindly, and when Mira decided he was polite, she reached out and started patting his head. As the head patting kept going, Lef internally groaned at being treated like a kid all over again. Then Mira sensed it and paused, asking, "Were you just thinking something rude?" With a tiny pout, she proudly declared she was 14. Boom. Instant proof she was his big sister. Left's eyes snapped wide in disbelief, but when he stared, she just shrugged it off and brushed away his reaction. Mayu, the fire dragon strike healer, steps forward and introduces herself with a firm handshake. Then bam, a huge muscular man barrels in, ruffles the boy's hair, booms a cheerful hello, and says he's Gladiolus, the party's shield. After the hellos, Hiso straight up says their party still has one more member, then snaps his gaze to Miyu and asks her to go wake them up. But Miyu stalls, whispering that she doubts the person will even move. He clocked their hesitation and ditched the volunteers. He went himself. Right as he turned to leave, one thought flickered in his head. Why did Miyu glance at him just a moment earlier? He storms down the hallway by himself, and behind him Hiso studies him with a sharp, thoughtful stare, while Mayu watches in silence. He slams into a door, barges it open, and inside a young woman with long, dark red hair is passed out cold, barely twitching as the creak echoes. He steps into the bright room and the woman's eyes flutter open, locking onto him as shock and dazed wonder flood her face. Her eyes lock onto him, and in that drowsy haze she whispers one breathless question, an angel. The next instant, her whole vibe flips. She lets out a wild scream, a near demonic aura blazing up around her, and she rockets out of bed straight for the stunt boy. The rest of the party, trailing right behind, can only stare in stunned silence. His world plunges into darkness as his face gets shoved into something soft and sweet-smelling, because that woman has latched onto him in a full tackle hug, squeezing the air right out of him while everyone else stares in panic and irritation, wondering if she's an angel or a demon. Left finds himself wrapped in a soft, warm hug, and his face instantly burns as the shock hits. Beside him, Hiso blurts out a sheepish apology for how suddenly it happened. Hiso, looking a little shaky, confesses he never thought their meeting would get attacked by a fire dragon right off the bat. Then he slaps a hand on the table, squares his shoulders, and says with a grin that they've got this and should start. Now it all makes sense because there he is, snug on Ria's lap, completely stunned, like she dropped him there with zero warning. He can't believe how fast she moves. Since when she came back after tidying up, he didn't even catch her motion. And this is his first time truly feeling what a top adventurer's elite physical skills can do up close. Ria stares down at him, cheeks burning, while Heiso blurts that he could only watch her from a distance until now. At last, he's close enough to touch her. Left is still totally flustered, but he resigns himself to the moment. In the back, Gladiolus smirks like he knows exactly what's going on, as Mayu leans in and watches the whole thing play out. Ria's excitement detonated on the spot. She clutched his left side even tighter. Her face twisted in pure joy as she blurted out that he's her ultimate ideal. She keeps pulling him in for warm, clingy hugs, murmuring his name over and over like it's pure magic, while Mayu watches her teammates' loud little outburst with a deadpan, yeah, okay stare. Mayu's calm finally shatters. Ria's words hit her like a spark, and a hot blush floods her cheeks as she realizes, love at first sight. She blurts out a shaky denial, swearing Left isn't her little brother, while Gladiolus nearby cackles and goes, Lefty might, we're giving up. Hiso lets out a heavy sigh, scanning the mess, clocking how the misunderstandings are piling up, while Left trapped in the middle looks totally swamped, eyes darting like they'll fall out of his head. Then Hiso slams his palm on the table and calls the meeting to order like a commander taking control. While the meeting's in full swing, RIA keeps that Left on her lap, and Hiso starts laying out the details. This mission is a direct request from the country itself, and the paper on the table spells out 1 full week and a massive payoff, 200 gold coins. He keeps breaking down the mission, and it's not just another task. This subjugation is ranked like a quest, because people have spotted a wyvern lurking near the mines. As soon as the info hits the table, his party tears into it. Ria grills them for the wyvern's traits and how many they're up against. Mayu challenges why it has to take a whole week, and Hiso just smirks, bragging that the king's throwing in a whopping 200 gold coins as proof he means business. As they trade words like prose, awe hits him like a wave. He realizes this calm, analytical vibe is what separates top-tier adventurers, and somehow none of them even look nervous. Seeing the boy lock in with total focus, Hiso tells him this is just how they always break down a request from the start, then turns to Left and demands his take. Left is blown away, but in the best way, realizing he just learned a ton, And Hiso even says he'll answer anything else Left wants to ask. As their debate finally winds down, they glance at a nearby grandfather clock and realize the night has sprinted past the hour. Rhea snaps to attention and tells him the left side curfew is real. She needs him back by 1 p.m. So yeah, they've got to leave soon. And just as he starts to respond, she yanks him into a crushing, tight hug that throws him completely off guard. With a hint of exasperation, Heiso tells Rhea to let the boy go and reminds her that Lef has his own situation, so she shouldn't make things awkward. Lef just looks up at Rhea and shyly asks if he can visit them again. His question sparks a flash of joy across her face, and she blurts out yes, shaking him with excitement as she asks, "Do you mean tomorrow?" Then she insists he can come play with them anytime, even if she admits the exact timing isn't fully set yet. As they split up, Gladiolus and Mayu kept the door open, slipping him warm invitations and promising he'd always have a place to return to. Yet Mayu, in a low whisper to herself, felt it in her gut. This goodbye somehow screamed final. With a radiant, heartfelt smile, Lef fires off his thanks to Mew and Gladiolus for being so kind to him. Meanwhile, Hiso, the leader of Fire Dragon Strike, shot his teammates a quick, sharp look for plotting without him. Then he shrugged it off with a heavy sigh and said, "Yeah, it's fine." Then he swung left with a huge grin and said the meeting went amazingly well, mostly because they'd finally had real, active participation. For once, Hiso even tossed out an open invite, telling the boy to stop by whenever he wanted. The second the offer hit, the boy practically lit up and left in a rush, thrilled by how genuinely they welcomed him. His adventure with the others wrapped up, and he rode back to the Austria estate, announcing himself as soon as he arrived. The household staff greeted him like a hero. That whole stint in the adventurer's world was done, and now it was back to what he truly was, a noble son, ready to dive back into his studies. His studies were jam-packed. He learned to read and write the Namafula Kingdom's official language, tackled the basics like arithmetic, and even dove into special courses on monsters, plus the kingdom's flora and fauna. On top of his studies, he threw himself into swordsmanship, because every swing came with the crushing weight of everything he still had to master. When night finally dropped, he slid into dinner with his father and mother, and when I asked how his day went, he spilled every last detail, no holds barred. His parents stared, eyes widening as their faces flipped from calm to shock. His mom leaned in and asked, voice sharp, "So you really got help from the legendary Fire Dragon Strike leader?" His father let out a huge sigh of relief. Once Left was safe again after those men went after him. While his mother couldn't hold back her excitement, she practically revealed she was a die-hard fan of the adventuring party. Still, no matter what they said, Left couldn't miss the worry lurking in their faces. Their worry melted away into pure warmth. His mother told him she didn't mind those chaotic 3 hours as long as he'd actually enjoyed himself. And his father nodded along, thrilled that his son had instantly made such solid new friends, while both of them wrapped him in gentle, reassuring smiles. He soaked up their affection like sunlight, and pure, unshakable peace filled his face. After dinner, he heads back to his room, cutting through the hush of the ornate family hallway in silence. Inside, he drops into his chair and starts shaking with anticipation, launching into the long-awaited grind, updating his encyclopedia by registering fresh new plants. He flips open the book, and with every new entry, the pages seem to swell right before his eyes. And that physical change hammers home the same truth: his powers are growing, and his options are multiplying. His eyes lock onto a dazzling crystal flower, and he can't stop staring, especially once he hears the price: 1 gold and 5 silver coins. That's way more than the 8 silver coins it took for an ordinary medicinal herb. And the moment he realizes it, excitement hits hard because he's already counting down to the day he'll register this special plant. That flower's a favorite for romantic confessions among adventurers the moment it's picked. Its crystal-like glow keeps shining, even long after it's gone. After he's registered every plant he bought, he cracks his knuckles and starts checking the magic cost for summoning each one. And when he confirms that even low-grade medicinal herbs, poisonous plants, and numbing grass only burn up 2 magic power, he lets out a breath, because it's exactly what he expected. Then he pushes into the moonlight grass uncharted ground because he knows it's the key ingredient for intermediate and higher tier potions. and it costs a whopping 4 times more than regular herbs. So he figures his magic use will land somewhere between 8 and 14. His prediction lands perfectly. Moonlight grass guzzles exactly 10 magic power. And from that, he calculates that a normal intermediate medicinal herb will need about 40 magic power to make. When he tries to materialize an intermediate herb, he freezes because the whole process guzzles a whopping 50 magic power, way more than he expected. That hit of reality slams him with dread as he thinks about what the crystal flower is really going to cost. His priciest purchase. His hand hovers over the encyclopedia, and a wave of doubt crashes over him. Then one terrifying thought halts him cold. He gaped into his space. Worry nodded in his face, and with his max magic power capped at 124, he braced himself. Could he really pull off the pricey crystal flower's materialization? He shoved the issue aside for the moment. Sure, he'd registered the flower, but once his magic was back, he'd bring it to life again. Then he snapped his focus to his next move, poisoning his plants and crafting the antidote. To see if the encyclopedia could actually be trusted, he cooked up 2 identical leaves from a poisonous plant. One the real deal he bought from a store, and the other freshly conjured by his own power. He cautiously chewed a sliver of that leaf, then instantly flinched, spat it out, and got slammed by a bitterness so brutal it felt unbearable. The poison finally sank its teeth in dull weakness, rolled through him, while his health bled away by 1 point every 5 minutes, so he clenched through it for one last breath before grabbing the antidote potion. After he downed the potion, pure relief hit him like a wave, and it worked insanely well. He wrapped up the test, fully sure the store-bought version, and those poison plants were producing the exact same effects. He flopped onto his bed, experiment done, and when the guild confirmed his medicinal herbs actually healed, he finally realized the plant encyclopedia could copy items flawlessly. Perfect timing to sell his creations. Still, his hands trembled as he remembered how awful it felt to swallow poison. Now that he had proof, though, he was ready to push even further. Lying there, he clocked a fresh problem. Sure, it was progress, but tiny. Even with that rare plant logged in his encyclopedia, there were times he was still helpless, because his total magic power rose with his level, and he could already see moments when his reserves would run out for good. It was all coming down to this: no escape, no detours. With a fierce grunt, he balled his fist tight, knowing the only way past that wall was to level up. He shot upright, gripping his book like it was a lifeline because he'd sworn to become an adventurer, smash monsters, and level up, all thanks to a combat arena gift. But that huge plan encyclopedia was useless in a real fight, and it crushed his confidence for a kid. As he wrestled with it, Hiso's warm invite to the guild echoed in his head. Then an idea ignited. 10 days after that decision, he finally crashed through the castle gates, stepping into the plains that sprawl outside land where goblins pop up all the time. 2 seasoned adventurers marched with him. Rhea, the red-haired woman, clocked his nerves and told him to breathe, while Mayu just watched from the side. She said this place was exactly as wild as it sounded, the Goblin Plains. And when he heard that, all he could do was nod with a shaky, nervous, yeah. Suddenly, Rhea yanked him back and ordered him to stop. Then she pointed to a far-off spot, her face sharpening as she zeroed in. Following the way she pointed, a tight little cluster of green-skinned creatures swarmed and shifted. Then Left froze, eyes bulging as the truth hit him. They were goblins. Mayu nodded and confirmed his identity, then explained the truth: monsters, just like adventurers, come with ranks, and based on their aura, she pegged them as the lowest F ring. She spun to the left and asked him, "Were you scared seeing those 3 creatures?" He leaned over the wall from their perch and, under his breath, admitted he was just a... Rhea steadied him and promised, "Your big sisters got you, they'll help." She cut straight to the truth: 3 at once is suicide for a beginner. So she'd drop 2, while he'd step in when only 1 was left. Then she ordered him to get ready with a surge of resolve. Left nodded, clenching his short sword tight, then blurted out his thanks because his heart was pounding, knowing this would be his first real fight against a monster. Outside the castle walls, she turns toward him, Left, and a woman with long, dark red hair exchanges greetings, smiling warmly as she introduces herself, then Left bows and tells her it's a pleasure to meet her too. Later, out in the open field, their peaceful hangout gets ripped apart right in front of them. A tiny, sinewy goblin with sharp ears snaps into view, and its claws bite into the dirt. His eyes fly wide with shock, and a bead of sweat slides down Left's face as the sudden danger hits him. Just as the goblin tries to react, a blur rockets through the air so fast it whips up dust. Then it yelps in shock, staring like it can't process what it just saw because its own companion is already locked in that stunned look. The monster swivels toward the kids, its hideous face, pitch-black eyes, and razor fangs in full view. Then Latina stays cool and tells Left it's his turn. Left nods, admitting it's terrifying up close. But his resolve hardens as he steels himself. He's made up his mind. He snatches a short sword, realizing that his plant-based gift won't cut it in a fight, so he steels himself to boost his magic by taking the monsters on, watching the goblin closely as it hammers out the same basic, repetitive attacks. He puts his daily training to the test and snaps aside a swing from the goblin's club, blade flashing as he cuts the goblin's chest just enough to draw blood. Beatrice and Latina cheering from the sidelines. And that tiny win proves his grind is paying off. The creature lunges again, throws the same move like it's copy-pasting the last strike, and Left grits his teeth. He knows raw power might be beating him, but he's sure of one thing: he's got the smarter game. As the goblin lunges, he darts aside and drives his sword straight into its face. Bam! The goblin's club clatters to the ground, and it staggers back, howling while it grabs its ruined eye. Left stands there grinning, already certain he's pulled the perfect blind hit on. He steels himself. The only thought pounding in his skull snatch the goblin's head. Then he erupts in a final desperate battle cry and lunges in, dagger first, as blood splashes from the hit. His blow lands clean and the goblin crumples to the grass, going still as its body hits the ground. After the creature dropped, he staggered back, wheezing hard as the battle's weight finally hit him. Then he looked down and saw the goblin's body gone, replaced by one dark, faceted gem. He snatched it up, and his heart sank with recognition. A magic stone, the core of a monster, perfect for forging and upgrading gear. Right as he slips into that quiet inspection, Beatrice and Mayu explode onto the scene. Beatrice shouting his name in panic, asking if he's hurt, while Mayu fires back the same question, checking if he's okay. Then Left snaps around to meet them and takes in their arrival. Beatrice suddenly hovers right in his space, her face packed with raw worry, and shimmering copies of her concern flicker all around him, so overwhelmed he can barely think. But somehow he forces out the truth: he's still okay. He can only chuckle nervously at her overprotective streak until Ryatari's sudden gasp snapped the moment she spotted an injury on his hand. He shrugs off the injury, swearing it's nothing. Maybe he just overdid it with the dagger. Mayu doesn't buy it for a second. She steps forward, palms lighting up with a gentle glow, and blasts a spell that she declares as the perfect heal. As the light fades, his hand is fully healed, and relief hits him like a wave. He rushes to thank Mayu, joking again about how insanely overprotective she is, and Mayu just shrugs, saying his safety is all that matters. With her left arm finally back to normal, Beatrice grins and cheerfully suggests they hunt the next goblin. Hand in hand, Left beams right back and they set off, ready to smash the next challenge. After a while, Left finally goes to talk to his new allies, and he arrives at this huge timber frame building. With their help, he thinks he might fight without that constant dread in his chest. He raps on the door, then a careful voice answers from inside. Who's there? And Left freezes because it's Helios. It hits him a second too late. He should have announced himself before showing up. He didn't even get a chance to meet Beatrice, slammed into him with a crushing hug, and her sweet perfume hit his nose while her voice boomed his name like pure, uncontainable joy. Beatrice's hub flared open, and she blurted how much she'd missed him, so when Mayu tried to step in, Left still recognized that hug instantly. It hit the perfect balance, soothing without hurting, and without even looking. He knew it was her, but dread snapped into his chest. This kind of comfort felt lethal. If he let it in, he was terrified he'd turn into dead weight, totally useless. Even though he fought his nerves, he still blushed and confessed more to himself than anyone that he'd missed one or two re-entries right then. Helios' voice cut through, welcoming him, but beside him, Hiso wore a much darker face and told Helio there was something urgent he had to talk about. He slipped away from the rise and headed to Fire Dragon's Strike HQ, already feeling the members were about to gather. Then he started panicking. Was it rude to show up unannounced? Hiso greeted him with open warmth, brushed off his apology, and told him the other two were just stepping out. And the moment Hiso lit up with pure excitement about Left's visit, the tension vanished. His joy gets cut off when Ryotris lunges in from behind, wrapping him up and blurting that she's so happy she woke up early. Then Hiso's eyes widen because Ryotris only turns this serious when it's about Left. Right on cue, Mayu steps in through the door, flashing a simple greeting like she owns the moment. Hiso exhales in relief, grateful she's here to help. She barges into the room, clocks Ryotris's position on the left, and calls out asking if he's here to play. Then Left turns to Mayu, gives her a quick greeting and says, "Nope, I need to talk." And Mayu's face lights up as she blurts that her big sis will listen. Hiso cuts in, tells Miyu to trust him, and says they'll move once Gio shows up. Then his brain stumbles over the name puzzles until it clicks Gladiolus. The realization hits hard because Helio's nicknames for him say this crew is tight, like family, and that only fuels Hiso's hunger to figure out everything about Fire Dragon Strike. As he spirals into that thought, he suddenly feels Ryotris's intense affection right up against him, close, mysterious, and real. Somehow the distance feels strange, but it doesn't bother him at all, because deep down he swears this warmth is something he's felt before. That feeling slams him with memories of Latina's childhood grin. Ryotris catches his drift and snaps, "What's wrong?" He waves it off, but inside he remembers Mayu's words that Ryotris used to only watch him from a distance. Until now. And the moment he connects the dots, he's convinced she's really into him. Then he steals his own resolve and vows to become someone respectable enough to earn that kind of look. Just then, the last member finally shows up. Gladion strides in, breathless and apologizing for the delay, saying he heard Left had something important to discuss, and Hiso confirms it on the spot. Gladion admits he's terrible at heavy conversations, but he's still ready to listen with everyone gathered, so Hiso tells Left to start. With all eyes on him, Left hesitates because leveling up at 10 feels way too wild to even be normal. He wonders if it's smart to admit his secret gift, his plant encyclopedia, to this crowd, but then curiosity about the legendary fire dragon, Strike, and the chance to get their help hits harder than fear. He scans the faces around him, catching their kindness and charm, even though he's just met them. And before doubt can creep in, he steps up and declares he'll start by explaining his gifts, then snaps his grimoire open, convinced that if he keeps hiding, nothing in his life will ever change. Once his explanation wraps up, Ryotri locks eyes with him in awe, praising his ambition as straight-up amazing, and Gladiolus nods along, saying it's a rare gift that'll make Left strong even if his magic is still limited. Hisoke is just as impressed, but Mayu can only stare in stunned silence. Hiso questions Left about the guild's new medicinal herbs, and Left admits every single one was a duplicate grown from Hiso's gift because he'd hunted the plants Hiso wanted that weren't already in his plant encyclopedia, then made fresh pages for them. When it clicks, Hiso's mind races. If Left's ability grows stronger, he could crank out these rare, valuable plants on demand anytime. As all of that sinks in, Mayu blurts out, apologizes, and insists she never tried to fool him. She feels responsible because it was Helio who brought them together. Then she promises that Left won't use the gift in a way that brings trouble. Left just listens, stunned at how deeply she's weighed everything for someone so young, while Hiso nods along, recognizing her urge to dig into the gift and understanding why. He scratches the back of his head, nodding along with Mayu's read on things, insisting Left doesn't feel like the troublemaking type, and that they just need to make sure nothing spirals out of control. Then Rhea suddenly steps in, freezes, Left with a sharp look, and declares, "I'm your big sister," before offering to help him however she can. Left accepts her with a grateful smile. Later, Hiso slumps on the sofa and lets out a heavy sigh, thinking he might have messed up by dragging that dangerously disruptive guy to the old woman at the general store, because one person like that could wreck a bunch of shops. Still, he swats the thought away with a tired finality, convinced it's okay as long as they're free. When Gladiolus finally reaches Left's house, he's hit with pure shock. This mansion is massive, and it leaves him genuinely intimidated. Hiso blurts that he thought Left was just a polite kid with fancy stuff, but now he gets it. Left is a real noble son. Left just grins, clearly thrilled they came to see him. Inside, the Left parents greet them with open arms. Count Austria even steps in and welcomes them warmly, telling everyone to drop the stiff formalities and talk like equals. Even with the Count's offer hanging in the air, Gladiolus panics, stammers out a mess, words tripping over each other. Heiso snaps him with a sharp jab in the side, barking that he better tack on the honorific sand for Lef's name and speak politely. Then Lef's mother gives them a warm, gentle smile, easing the tension and telling them to relax. Heiso finally lets out a breath of relief, admitting he'd been terrified he'd mess up the proper etiquette, because he's always been terrible at it. He straight up asks if they can really talk casually. Lef's mother smiles softly and says, yes, of course. Once the small talk was over, Count Austria locked eyes with Heiso, dropped the smile, and got deadly serious, straight up asking what brought him to their home that day. A strong, unshakable voice slices through the room as he declares, since I'm negotiating with nobles, I'm not holding back for a second. Heiso slouches back like he owns the place and tells you straight up, he's here for one reason, business. His proposal blasts Lef's mother right off her guard because he's not messing around through the guild. He wants Fire Dragon Strike to become Lef's permanent bodyguards. Lef's father stares in shock, asking if they're really signing up for more than just one day. Meanwhile, out in the distance, Lef, Rhea, and Miu in tow sets off to take on his next goblin. As the talk drags on, Lef's mother snaps into action, warning them her son is only 10, while his father keeps pushing, demanding why they're rushing a kid's growth when his gift doesn't even scream combat. Right then, a flash of memory hits Lef, parries a goblin's club like it's nothing, and drives it down with his dagger. He can't shake the feeling that this training's about to go way too far, and he secretly wonders if it'll end up hurting him. After the hunt pays off, Rhea cheers him on for snagging yet another magic stone. Then he tells me he absolutely got a goblin request form from the guild because the quest was perfectly lined up. In the drawing room, Heiso goes straight for the parents' worries, telling them those one-of-a-kind gifts don't bloom overnight, so they need to start academy training now. Then he makes them a vow. A Fire Dragon Strike member will always stay with him when he leaves town, so he'll never face real danger. Lef's mother stays lost in thought, murmuring that she can't shake the question, why would a crew this powerful treat her son with kindness? Her silence gets answered the moment the party spills their real feelings. Rhea blurts that the left one is an angel. Mayu insists it's the faculty matter, that he's her little brother, and Heiso just watches on, totally unimpressed by the whole show. Then he lays it all out straight to the parents, saying he cares about it, left in a few big ways. His upbeat attitude toward the plant encyclopedia, the shock that a kid would actually think this hard about what their gift will become, and the truth that Mayu and Ryatris have genuinely started to like him. Then he nods toward Lef's brand new gloves, like there's one more reason he's not saying out loud yet. As the chatter rolls on, Lef now slips on a pair of gloves and Mayu's eyes light up. They fit you perfectly. Lef grins and admits he stole them from her earlier. But over by them, Rio can't hide her blush, rage, and jealousy twisting in her chest. Heiso watches it all unfold, silently stunned, because the women in his party are usually a nightmare to deal with. And yet they're warming up to someone this fast. Sure, the plan encyclopedia matters, but he can feel something bigger sparking in the boy. Before he can dig deeper, Rhea cuts in, declaring she's buying her own gloves, and grins as she begs him to come help her pick. Watching that bright, happy moment between the adventurers and their son, Austria sharing the warmth with his wife, can't help but smile. Please smile. His wife's face changes, shifting into deep thought, and she whispers to herself, wondering if this sparks memories of something that happened before. Sensing exactly where she was headed, he decided to sweeten his pitch, and Heiso cut in, speaking up to address them straight on. He points at himself, dead serious, while his buddies beside him smirk like they already know. Yeah, I'm in too, and then he starts explaining. After he finishes describing that one-of-a-kind gift holder, the words hit like a punch, making both the Count and his wife snap into stunned silence with a gasp. He keeps going, saying that even those wild, one-of-a-kind gifts can drag their feet, bloom late, look worthless at first, and demand a ton of time before they show what they can really do. Then he drops the truth. His own power was so hard to control that the villagers mocked him, called him useless, and insisted he couldn't do a thing in front of anyone. His luck flipped like a switch right when the guy beside him, Gio, saved him with a huge grin and cut in, laughing that Heiso used to be a total crybaby. That bombshell about her idol's past hits Sylvia Austria like a brick. She can't hold it together, her face burning red as she's internally freaking out in pure joy. And right away, Hiso hauls Geo forward and barks at him to quit spilling more than he needs to. He keeps talking, and when he admits he saw a left walk into the guild, you can hear the worry in his voice because that kid's tiny silhouette slams straight into memories of his own past. Then it hits again. He remembers people in town trashing the plant, encyclopedia as a gift, and that's what pulls his attention even harder. Then he watched the kid stand up to his adult harassers with pure dignity, and suddenly that little back looked massive, so massive that Hiso knew right then he had to see where this child's future would go. His conviction hits Count Austria so hard that he officially accepts the offer. Then he orders Hiso's party to guide and protect them, promising solid pay for their bodyguard work. And when it's done, the two men seal the deal with a firm handshake as Hiso bows in thanks and Left's parents watch, fully approving. Later, out in an open field, Left kicks off his training. He barks a determined shout and swings a tiny sword, while Rhea and Mayu watch from just a few paces away. Right in the middle of his practice, he suddenly stops dead, shock flashing across his face, and this weird wave hits him as fresh power surges up from deep inside. It hits him like a jolt. His level has climbed. He rushes to check his status, and there it is, level 2, proof that all his hard work is paying off. As Rattress and Hiso shower him with congratulations, Rattress squeezes him into an enthusiastic hug, and he can't help wondering, did his gift's level climb too? Mayu stared at his status plate and everything changed. Where there used to be nothing, new numbers appeared, and now it clearly shouted, Plant Encyclopedia. LV, I gulped because it confirmed one thing: his gift had leveled up for real. Rattress tells Left that at first, even her own magic void couldn't show a level, and that's exactly why she says his gift is rare, just like hers. Hiso leans in, convinced it matches her magic too. After Hiso demanded to know what new powers he had, he tossed that question aside, then checked it himself. He snapped a tiny plant into existence in his palm, and with it, he revealed he can now store those materialized plants. He instantly sees why this new storage trick is a game changer. Remembering how brutal it was to haul 55 bundles of low-grade medicinal herbs, and knowing this power will make his life way easier the moment he taps into it. The talk keeps rolling. Hiso demands an update on his own growth. Rattress asks if he has to grab items with his right hand to stash them like materialization. And Left freezes mid-thought, remembering Helio's warning that unique gifts level up in slow motion, wondering if those rules will even hold when he gets stronger. Rattress shot a glance at his status again and the gasp tore out of him. His HP jumped by 15, but his magic power skyrocketed by 115, crashing into a total of 239. And she called it out like it was something huge, something genuinely world-shaking. Staring at his fresh stats, Left realizes he's not built for close-quarters combat. So he decides he needs a new game plan, while Hiso tells him to slow down and think it through together. They stay by his side until night hits, and by then, Left has clawed his way up to level 3. Meanwhile, Left's father, Count Austria, lays out the plan, go through the guild, officially ask for the party guard to watch Left, and suddenly their rank climbs too, like it's a win-win everyone can cheer for. His mother, Salvia, chimes in with soft encouragement, telling Left to soak up everything from them while still urging him not to fall behind on his usual studies. She and her husband sit there as their son glows with gratitude, bowing and praising them way too much because of his fresh training setup, the only rule he gets. Every night he has to die with them. Later, he plops down cross-legged on his bed and grinds through his next move in his head. He can't help but compare his bulky plant encyclopedia to those brutal combat gifts, and it hits him hard. If he had even a shred of swordsmanship, he could wipe out 3 foes in a blink. This whole societal machine decides a kid's fate the moment they're born. Noble heirs are pushed into either the Royal Knight Order or the Magician Corps, clocking in at the academy, then drilling governance like it's their birthright, because they are meant to run the family business next commoners. They get the same choice, just with the odds stacked to the floor. Most end up as foot soldiers, merchants, or adventurers chasing any sliver of freedom and fortune. And yeah, a third son inheriting is rare, but the pressure on their futures never changes. No matter which path you pick, there's one truth that never changes. If you want to level up your basics, you've got to go fight monsters. He slams his fingers across the pages of his encyclopedia, hunting for the answer he needs. His hunt comes up empty. Every plant listed in his own encyclopedia is useless for fighting, and the rage to fight smart with his unique gift collides with the brutal truth right now he has no weapon. His father shoves a brand new treasure into his hands, a book from an older generation, and the Count swears it's packed with real details about the Amophila Kingdom's geography and plants, leaving him staring in awe, then glancing away, then back again. He jumps right into studying the tone, even though half the words trip him up, and he decides he'll push through by leaning on the illustrations. His father warns him to use it wisely, and he agrees, fierce and determined. As he studies the ancient pages, a sudden realization hits him like lightning. He jabs a finger at the old book's entry, and it clicks in his head. This plant in the drawing could be exactly what they need, and it could change everything. He bursts into the adventure party with his findings, then proudly names the two plants he found, Karamazoo and Explosion Grass, while their leader, Hiso, stares in awe. Hiso rubs his chin and stares into the possibilities, admitting that these kinds of plans could pack a terrifying punch on the battlefield. Rhea snaps her hands together, eyes blazing with excitement, using plants, powered by Left's wild gift, as weapons sound so brilliant and fresh that she can't stop thinking about it. Iso leans over to the left side and fires off a question. Does he know where plants grow wild? Since Mayu's the real expert, Iso hands the spotlight to her, and Mayu nods, ready to go grab a map. She unfurls the map, points straight at a spot, and says both plants grow right near the entrance to the monster forest just south of the Goblin Plains. She tells Lev, just a kilometer into these woods, those monsters won't hit any harder than the goblins you've already fought. But Lev can't believe it. His whole body trembles as that terrifying song about this infamous forest comes roaring back. The other party members rush to apologize, saying, I'm the only one who can't come. Everyone else has unavoidable business to handle. Mayu steps forward with steel in her eyes, declares she'll take full responsibility, and swears she'll act as his big sister for the expedition, while Rhea just stares, completely stunned by the bold move. Rhea asks if he'll go today, and the moment he agrees, she hooks him in a crushing hug, then yelps in pain as her body seems to twist under the pressure, while Mayu snaps in fast, yanking Rhea's cheek and scolding her to stop roughing up their precious client. He stares as Mayu announces her deformation is finally back to normal, then asks him to look after her, and when she smiles and says, for today I'm your little brother, and I'm only yours, Rhiatra suddenly clings to him, sobbing his name like she's lost everything. Mayu yanks the crying woman away, insisting it's time to go, and left standing there flustered. Lev finally gives in, formally saying he'll behave and begging Mayu to take care of him. Rhiatra gets yanked off, screaming Lee's name as he scrambles on the floor, his tiny hand clawing for hers, only for Mayu to snatch her away before he can grab her, while she watches from behind. A door slams shut and cut us off, leaving me alone with the stairs and a dead quiet silence. Then Helio's voice snapped through the other side, saying he's counting on her to lock up. Then my youth whips his head to the boy, and in a calm voice that cuts through the air, tells him to run and escort the monster forest to his big sister. Left freezes, staring at her with wide eyes, trying to figure out what monster forest even means. That place isn't just scary. It's a massive, dread-soaked woodland sprawled right on the border between the Nymothla Kingdom and the Griusa Empire. He asks if there's a song about the monster forest, and Mayu lights up, yeah, it's the impassable zone where deadly monsters swarm, a natural wall that's kept the two neighboring countries from ever plunging into war. He grins and admits he's heard the rumors, then drops names like a famous kids' picture book, and even a stage play about it, before finishing with the scary truth that parents literally sing that song while scolding their kids. So everybody knows the forest is a dangerous place. Then he leaned in and asked Mayu if her hometown had anything like it. She said she'd seen the picture book on a shelf, but it never grabbed her enough to open it, and as they kept walking, she suddenly blurted, "We're here." They stop at the edge of a thick forest, and Mayu tells him, "First, we're hunting a plant called Karamazoo." His excitement snaps right back, and he blurts out a yes, practically begging her to lead. Mayu flashes a small, confident smile, and then she turns and heads out first. As they push deeper, she grills him about Karamazoo. When Lefter starts explaining, he swears what he knows is a vine that clings to whatever it touches, then spreads in thick clusters wherever the trees crowd together. She leans in, listens hard, then drops a game-changing detail. Karamazoo is nocturnal, and that shocks him so fast he's yanked back to a memory of a moonflower from his previous life. Mayu then breaks it down. The plant evolved to bloom only at night, since every pollinator it relies on is a nocturnal insect. So its pollen gets whisked right along exactly when it needs to. She kept talking, telling a wild tale about the Karamazoo, how its vine wraps animals up tight, cuts off their breath, then slurps in the nutrients. And just when you think that's the end, here's the terrifying detail. Once it grabs something, it can't digest like a stone. It can't pull itself free. Left's eyes shot wide with pure shock at the news, and Mayu slammed in one last warning, depending on the conditions. That plant could just shrivel away, making their hunt even harder. He got completely hooked on her tales, suddenly realizing their journey runs on a little bit of luck. Then he couldn't stop himself from breaking into a warm smile like, "Please come back and smile again," he said, asking the audience to buy into his reaction. As they pushed deeper into the woods, the trail ahead suddenly split into two different paths. Left blurted out whether adventurers had carved this road, and when Mayu checked the map, she nodded yes and told him the truth. The broad trail was packed with monster hunters. But the Karamazoo they wanted only sprouted in tight clusters along the slimmer, quieter path nobody bothered to take. He stared into the dark, narrow path, dread creeping up his spine. Then May softly reached over and steadied him with a reassuring hand on his head. She leaned in close and told him, "It's fine, I've got you." And just like that, his confidence snapped back. Left nodded, and they pushed on down the path as it faded around them, until they finally spotted their prized thick, tangled Karamazoo vines. When you stared at the tangled mess, you joked it felt like a natural snare one that would choke out even small animals, maybe even goblins, before they could slip free, and I agreed, saying nobody in their right mind would ever step into a place like that. His gaze snapped to one twisted vine, nodded back on itself, and the truth hit him like a hammer. He jabbed at it and shouted, "Only a fool would ever grab something like that." With his new insight locked in, he grabbed a different vine, one that dangled freely, and shot Mayu a quick look like, "Is this one safe?" She nodded, then he tucked his encyclopedia under his arm and started harvesting the plant with careful, steady hand. As he finally harvests the vine, Mayu erupts into a delighted clap, praises him right away, and makes it clear she's already logged the new plant in his encyclopedia. Then she snaps their attention to the next target, explosion grass. Mayu asks if he actually studied it, and he swears he did, explaining that once those sacs get triggered, they burst and fling poison everywhere, turning nearby creatures into nutrient fuel. Mayu nods, impressed by how much more ruthless it is than Karamazoo at snatching prey. She explains that even tiny things like a light sprinkle of rain, a whisper of wind, or a stray little stone can set the poison sacs off, and then the toxin blasts across the land, dropping animals and monsters just for breathing it in. He panics, grilling her about whether the poison can actually kill him, and if he can survive it. Mayu snaps back that deaths are rare, then drops the real nightmare. The victim's whole body locks up, paralyzing them and keeping them still for days on end, and it hits him like a punch. He sits with the grim truth, and when it gets bad, whole groups get trapped, drained, and left helpless as the plant's roots and fungi surge out, wrap the prey up, and start feasting on their nutrients, until nearly everything in range is doomed to be consumed. Mayu stares into the forest, her face full of deep thought, and whispers that the quiet explosion grass is pure nightmare fuel. Somehow it's also the very thing that's made this monster-filled wilderness even wilder. He whips around her, stunned. "You really know everything." Mayu just smiles softly and shrugs. "It's only because I'm your big sister." Her simple words slam into him like lightning. His face flushes as sudden clarity hits. Wow, big sisters really are incredible. Mayu says the grass is right there and they should head over, but before anyone moves, Left drops to one knee and tests the wind, then points them toward the upwind direction so they can snatch the volatile plant safely. Once they've locked onto their path, they stumble into a small clearing, and there it is, a huge, calm-looking field of explosion grass. Soft white blooms waving like they're harmless, even though they're absolutely lethal. He stares at the field with full-blown dread, a bead of sweat sliding down his temple, and he whispers, "Is this the explosion grass cluster? because the silence out here feels downright wrong. Mayu lets out a low, steady hum of confirmation, eyes locked on the grim horror beneath broken goblin bodies scattered through the flowers, dropped by the plant's poison, and she whispers that this is straight up hell. She tells him the goblins got hit by poison, and even though they're upwind right now, she snaps a warning to stay sharp and don't breathe a single trace of it. Then he covers his mouth with his hand and nods in agreement. She steps in fast, slides a hand onto his shoulder, and yanks his momentum to a stop. "Left, stay right where you are," she murmurs, and he jerks his gaze to hers, stunned by how close she is. She leans in and cups his cheek, chanting softly as her arrow guard magic flares. Then a shimmering protective aura snaps around him at once. As the spell clamps down, she leans in and tells him this magic makes him way tougher against status ailments, so things should finally feel safer. Then, right from her touch, a real warmth spreads through him. He pulls back just a little, staring at his hands as the last spark of magic fades away, and he thanks her from the bottom of his heart. Mayu only answers with a quick, satisfied nod. Her eyes lock back onto the deadly field, and she snaps. "The spell only lasts about 30 minutes, don't get cocky." Then she warns him to steer clear of any spot where that terrifying poison could creep into his lungs. He gets it, and still his resolve hardens. With the cyclopedia clutched to his chest, he declares that this exact threat is the reason he's registering the plant to level up his abilities. Mayu watches his resolve and tells him to start by studying the explosion grass up close, and he nods with a steady, "Yes, got it." Deep in the forest, Lev clutched his plant encyclopedia and stared at his own mess, realizing he had to move carefully because, without Mayu's guidance, he would have been done for ages ago. Then he zeroed in on one flower, clocking a tiny, deadly difference in its poison sac. Some were swollen and some weren't. He points at one of the flowers and tells me casually but with urgency that the one with the still unpuffed sac has already drained its poison, so he needs me to confirm it's safe now. His face ignites in a wide, bright smile as he nods hard with excitement. Then Mayu lifts a finger to her lips, grinning like she just scored a perfect hit as she praises him, confirming that his read was dead on. They stand together in a sun-dappled clearing, and Mayu snaps him into a grin, congratulating him for nailing her goal. Then she grabs the moment and tells them not to waste a second. They've got to leave now. He nods with huge excitement, then fires off, "Can we try out the encyclopedia's features on the way back?" He whips around, instantly catching the vibe, and asks if he wants to register some plans. He jabs a finger at that giant tree and asks about the Filtro tree. Mayu beams and says it's tough, smooth, and easy to shape, perfect for practice swords and shields. And Lef instantly clicks. This could be the defense he's looking for. He strides up to that gigantic trunk, brow furrowed as he frets over whether his encyclopedia can even name a plant this massive. Then he thrusts his hand out and slaps his palm flat against the bar. A deafening flash erupts where they clash, blinding everyone at once. Lef jerks back with a shocked cry, hands up to shield his eyes, and Mace squints hard, fighting the brutal glare. As the light dies down, the whole clearing goes dead silent, like the world just held its breath. The giant Filtel tree is completely gone, and all that's left is a faint mark in the ground where it stood, while fresh beams of sunlight rush into the empty space. He glances down at his book, and a gentle glow spills out. Then it hits him the tree vanished because it's been successfully logged into the plant encyclopedia, and beside him May lets out a soft, beautiful murmur. He stood in the clearing, stared up at the sky, stunned by the raw power he'd just unleashed, then whipped to me, "You," and apologized for wiping her companions and even making the plants vanish, swearing he'd use this power with way more care from now on. Mayu just shot him a soft, steady bit of encouragement, telling him he could do it. Leave it to Lef to stare in stunned silence at her simple faith. Then it clicked, his gift. The plant encyclopedia wasn't just spinning on its own, it was fueled by living plant life from every corner of the globe, siphoning strength straight out of them. As they pushed forward, their steps screeched to a stop up ahead. On a little rise stood a single goblin, gripping a crude club with both hands. Lef pointed out how weird it was to catch one solo, and Mayu nodded, calling it probably a stray. Then he turned to her and asked what they should do next. Deciding to test his brand new powers, Lef blurted that he'd try the Karamazuru plant, cracked open his encyclopedia, and a leafy vine snapped into his gloved hand. like it was summoned on command. He grinned when he realized he could call plants without touching them with his bare skin. And yeah, I couldn't help but be impressed too. His relief hit like a wave because he'd been terrified that Vine would coil around him like an anaconda. Meanwhile, Mayu leaned in and teased him, calling him a dummy, laughing at the thought of him getting totally tangled up. He was gearing up for the fight, tossed the encyclopedia aside and clenched a short sword in his left, while gripping the summoned plant in his right. Then his mind raced, wondering if this weird combo could actually hold its own in battle. He tightened his grip on the sword, knowing he could swing it with his non-dominant hand, but the awkward feel rattled his nerves instantly. He snapped his mind back into gear. No way he was putting the sword away. He slid the Karamazuru into his left hand, keeping it close, trusting that if it tangled him up, Mayu would yank him out of trouble. With his dominant right hand on the sword and the vine in his left, he squared up on the goblin like a storm about to break. He steals his resolve, dashes ahead, and shoves the summoned Karamazoo plant straight into the goblin. With a loud shout, he hurls the vine straight through the air, and it snaps around the goblin's legs, trips it instantly, and locks it down tight. The creature got pinned, and he towered over it with his sword cocked high, swearing it wouldn't move again until the blade crashed down, while a short-haired young woman watched from just a few steps away, eyes locked on the moment the final strike hit. When the goblin's body disappears, he spots the Karamazuru plant still sitting there, and the moment he realizes it could wreck the local ecosystem if it takes root, he fires off his storage power to grab it safely. He replays the fight in his head and admits it. His throws aren't as dependable as he wants them to be, and if he misses once, he could get himself wiped out before he even gets a second chance. That train of thought slams him into a new conclusion. If he keeps his right hand tied up with plants all the time, it's a real danger and one he's got to watch extra closely the moment he's by himself. Just as he's lost in thought, a young woman steps in and watches him, then closes the distance, praises his work, and tells him he's insanely skilled with his gift. He drops to one knee and gives a simple, sincere thank you. He shakes his head, brushing off her praise, and admits he's got a long road ahead, because once he digs into his performance, he spots problem after problem he still needs to fix. His modest little assessment makes her pat his head with a soft smile, and she thinks, yep, he really did break everything down like I figured. Then she watches him and realizes kids like him grow fast, so she swears she can't lag behind for a second. A grin flashes across her face as she hatches the next test with explosion grass, and Left jerks his gaze upward in shock. She's pointing at a nearby castle wall where two more goblins have just popped in, roaring that they're perfect target. She grins through pure determination, sword poised in her grip, and vows she'll go after one of the goblins. Then she watches, giving her a sinful grin. In the blink of an eye, before Left can even plant a foot, a brutal blast wipes out one of the goblins from afar, then leaves the other frozen in shock. Mayu stays calm, tells him it's his turn, and urges him to give it everything. Left stammers, caught off guard, and can only squeeze out a shaky yes. His surprise flips into straight-up shock. Then he stares at his own hand and realizes the gap in their power is massive, so overwhelming he can barely even register how fast and how hard her attack just smashed through. Beneath Mira's sharp gaze, Left clenches his teeth under the weight of everyone's expectations. She hands him the job of watching their surroundings, and he vows not to mess up. He digs deep, channels his will, and bam summons a plant straight from his encyclopedia. Explosion grass, flawless and perfectly formed. With his strange weapon all set, he pauses to scan the battlefield, smirking as the wind sweeps his way. Perfect conditions for what's next. He shuffles forward, worn to the bone, but dead set on drawing every enemy in. And right when a lone goblin barrels at him, he readies the explosion grass, then snaps his arm and hurls it straight into the creature's face. The plant detonates the instant it hits, bursting into a ferocious blast that swallows the goblin whole while he throws himself back on instinct, ducking hard and bracing for the brutal shockwave. From a safe distance, Mira flung arrow guard boom. The poisonous smoke from the blast vanished in a blink, and Left just stared, stunned, whispering how brutally that plant had erupted. His eyes go wide with pure shock, and he snaps a hand over his mouth because the destruction he just unleashed is finally sinking in. Mira yells that the plant's working and orders Left to finish the downed goblin. Then it twitches on the ground. Left moves to comply, but dread slams into him. If that plant had landed wrong, he'd be the one getting caught in the blast of his own devastating attack. He closes in on the fallen creature, his tiny silhouette cutting through the wrecked ground, and the idea that his power could be misused hits him like a cold jolt, shivers crawling down his spine. Just as he's about to land the final blow, the goblin's body crumbles into glittering specks of light. Then all that's left is one cold, dark stone. He drops to his knees, presses his palm to the stone, and whoosh, it slips into his hand as the word store blooms in front of him. When he looks around, he lets out a breath of relief. Some of the explosion grass he tossed actually survived the blast. He stares down the now limp Karamazoo plant in his hand and snaps, asking Mira if they can reuse the stored plants. Then she confirms his fear and explains that once a plant like the Karamazoo materializes, it loses its power to bind anything. His prompts kept staring him in the face, screaming, "So why collect them if you can't use them in combat again?" Left shrugged it off and warned that tossing them aside could backfire. These things might take root. And with explosion grass around, that's a nightmare. Then he pointed out the real value: medicinal herbs can be remade into potions instead. Staring down at his encyclopedia, he falls into deep thought and whispers that maybe the plants wouldn't be thrilled to get pulled into existence just to serve his convenience. He settles it in his mind keeping them safe isn't just a smart move to stop them from dying off. It's his way of honoring the power they give him, and it finally brings him a sense of calm. With a soft smile, he dares to hope it's true, and Mira watches him like, "I can only imagine, but if I were a plant, I swear I'd bloom for the way you feel about me." Then her eyes snap to their latest experiment. She asks how the explosion grass turned out, admitting there are still tons of problems. Left, clutching a monster stone, nods and says it all came with a scary downside. The poison powder is so unpredictable, it could easily trap him in it too. He explains that because he's built for close quarters combat, explosion grass is way harder for him to control safely than the Karamazoo. After a beat of silence, she stares him down, calls him by name, and points out the one fatal mistake in how he thinks, because in his head, fighting is something he does all by himself. Her sharp observation blindsides him, and all he can do is stare back at her, totally lost. Right as he's about to answer, Helio's bright, cheerful voice slices through the air and startles him, asking if they've gathered enough goblin magic stones for their quest. Mira whips her head toward the distant guild hall and pushes, "Let's trade them for the reward." And Helio immediately lights up, fully on board. At the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist leans in and confirms he dropped off 10 goblin magic stones, then breaks into cheers congratulating him for nailing his very first quest and handing over his reward. She tells him the points were added to his adventure registration card, and once the total climbs, his rank climbs with it. Clutching that card, he practically lights up, already celebrating in his head like it's his first ever subjugation reward. His calm little victory is spotted by the same 3 adventurers from before, and they reluctantly admit he's finally a true adventurer. Then they spot his companion and call her Mira from the Fire Dragon Strike Party. The moment they realize the rumors about his powerhouse escort are actually true, Myra's eyes snap onto them, and all 3 of them bolt before anyone can say another word. She whips her focus back to the left, silently wishing him luck with his next request, and he jumps right in, eager as ever, saying he's got to grab a few things too. Then the receptionist leans in from the side, hearing it all, and calls out that they've also got delivery requests for medicinal herbs available. The receptionist lights up, saying the pharmacy that got his last batch of herbs raved about them, everyone perfectly sized, spotless, and easy to work with. And that hits Left like a punch. He never really clocked just how unnaturally perfect his magic plants were. He smiles and turns her down for now, saying he's still chasing monster subjugation quests, and she tells him to come back anytime if he changes his mind. As they step outside, Mira blurts that she never pictured the plants from his encyclopedia being so perfectly uniform, like clones from a single page. She admits the guild's constant craving for more herbs is real, but she also tells him straight, maybe he should stop doing big bulk deliveries. Her mind is razor sharp and fiercely protective, because as the guildmaster's right hand, she knows that if Left's strange ability draws too much attention, the wrong kind of scrutiny will come crashing in. The implication slams into him. His eyes snap wide as the danger clicks into place, and he rushes to insist he doesn't want to cause any trouble. Back at the estate gates, Mira starts packing to leave Kairamura, thanks her for all her hard work, but Lef freaks out, worrying she'll have to brave town alone. The head maid calmly reassures him, saying, Mira's no ordinary maid. She can drop monsters in an instant, leaving Lef utterly stunned. She says Mira's only 14, yet she's already out on the front lines, living the kind of life most people can't imagine. And that shocks Leftus to his core because, wow, she has to be incredible. He thinks it through in silence. With her age and her line of work, she probably never even made it into the academy. He remembers that day they talked about the Monster Force picture book, and Myra's answer hit like a brick. No interest. So she never read it, and that sharp, cold tone leaves him staring, trying to figure out what it really meant. As he stares into the distance, the thought snaps into place. Maybe Mira never wanted to be a big sister, but necessity shoved her into that role anyway. After crashing into bed from a brutal day, he grabbed his stats like a mic drop. His level shot up again. His stamina hit 58, and his magic power soared to a ridiculous 469. He just stared, shocked at how wild his magic stat keeps growing, thinking maybe he should track down Helio and the others about it. Then he let out a breath, sank into his pillow, and replayed everything that just happened. His thoughts snap to a halt when he jolts bolt upright, and the filth tree hits him like a flashback. Then that weird sensation crashes back too, the same one that told him he'd absorbed the forest power when he first recognized it. So now he can't stop thinking, what if he actually manifests the herbs, all those identical little sprouts? He slams the thought down fast, because mass manifesting a whole filth tree is way too huge. But deep inside, a greedy part of him still screams to try. His thoughts drift to you, always charging into fights like you'll be alone, and rage hits him like a wave. Because he knows so many people are desperate for herbs, but he's still forced to keep his gift locked up in secret. That one word keeps screaming in his head, and he finally understands why he has to hide his gift too. Even with all that weight on his mind, a tiny smile still flickers across his lips. He shuts his eyes and decides, yeah, today was actually fun. A few days later, Left is putting on his formal outfit when a maiden rushes in and announces that the Fire Dragon Strike Adventurer Party has arrived, leaving him stunned since he had nothing planned. But she insists they move fast and get hospitality ready immediately. Kyra, the head maid, strides over to set everything straight. She says his parents are out, the visitors insist it's just a greeting, and the front entrance is enough. Then she turns to him and asks what he wants them to do. Luck can only blurt out, confused a greeting. Right then, two familiar faces burst in at the entrance. Helio flashes a huge grin and waves him over, shouting his name, while Gladiola steps beside him in heavy armor, smirking like he already knows how this ends. He stares back, eyes bulging with shock. And when Kyra steps in beside him, he snaps their names out immediately, then blurts his first question, why they're dressed so strangely. He listened as Mayu burst out that their party had just gotten an emergency call and would be away for about a whole week, and the shock in his chest only grew as he asked if she was packing for the trip, only to have Helio confirm he was too. Then the kid snapped his focus to the next thing and demanded to know where Ms. Leotris had gone. As he asked, a weird shuffling noise ripped through the hallway. One of the maids froze in terror, because the crawling, low voice sounded like it was coming straight for Lord. Lev clocked the pattern in an instant. His face flared with a deep blush as he flung his arms wide, excitedly insisting his face was ready to be smothered and waving for the Leotris to come right ahead. He waited there, trembling with anticipation, but when the figure finally came close, all he got was a baffled, huh, and that single sound yanked the excitement right out of him until his eager smile snapped back into place. Suddenly, Leotris's body melted into a slick puddle on the floor, and Lef gasped her name in panic. Then a voice surged up from the liquid, recognizing him, and Lef could only cling to his words as he begged her not to let go, because he was right there. The moment his voice hit the air, the puddle churned back to life. Leotris shot forward and clung to him in a wild, desperate hug. She blurted for her Lefi, screaming with joy that she'd finally found the real one, and then vanished, still in his grip, certain he was the one she'd been searching for. As they stared through the dramatic reunion, Helio muttered that her bond was dangerously abnormal. Gladiolus tried to cover it with an awkward laugh, and Miu Kuli pointed out that Leotris genuinely didn't want to be torn away from Once Leotris finally calmed down, still latched onto him, they slipped away to talk mission details with Hisso because a full week-long trip was wild, especially when even a wyvern subjugation had only taken 2 days, and Hisso admitted that was exactly why they'd come to deliver the news to him in person. Hisso's face snapped serious, and he explained that the party had been handpicked for this job, meaning something brutally powerful was expected to crash the scene. This news detonated panic in Leotris. She screamed that 7 days, 168 hours, was way too long to be apart from her Leafy, her cries tearing through the air with pure agony over the separation about to strike. She wails in pure panic, refusing to let him go. She clings to him and screams his name like it's her lifeline. While the household maids stare in shock at the raw, heart-wrenching intensity, he lets out a quiet sigh of relief. Now that her body's back to normal, he knows she's finally herself again. Miyu's face gets squished by her crushing hug, and he blurts for Leotris to stop. Then she breaks down, tearful and apologizing, while Leotris's brother secretly thinks, yeah, I get it, but this clingy stuff is throwing off the whole workload. He decides to take control himself and carefully tries to snap the grieving adventurer back to reality. He scoots in close and whispers his offer into her ear, starting with, only if it's okay with you. From a distance, Hisso watches them trade quiet words, trying to figure out what part of their heart still speaks, then guilt claws at him hard, like they may have dumped too much responsibility on the boy. Those whispered words hit like lightning. Leotris's face melts into a blush of understanding as she locks eyes with the smiling boy and nods, agreeing to his terms. Her whole vibe flips instantly. Confidence and energy explode out of her. Then she winks and snaps, leave it to me, freezing her party in stunned silence. She whips around to her comrades, ready to roll, and with her mission locked in, she tells them, once this is over, me and Left are going on a date. Just like that, the adventuring party finally starts down the road, and Hisso points out Left really knows how to handle Leotris. Mayu nods, saying you can't even guess which one is older, since Left just watches them walk off from the manor steps. Outside the grand alstree of Family Manor, the sky gleams and the day feels calm, almost like it's waiting to explode. Inside, Leotris is on cloud 9, and Fat Caro can't help but point it out while over on the left. Left watches her and breaks into a smile, thrilled by her renewed drive. Curious, Kyra leans in and asks what words of encouragement he got, and he blushes, admitting he was promised a shopping trip, then coyly smirks and says the rest is a secret. Later, he sits alone in a patch of grass, staring into the silence that finally drops in after the Fire Dragon strike crew is gone. His solitude barely lasts a moment before boredom slams him, and those butterflies keep fluttering around his head like they're mocking him. He flops onto the grass, and a wave of heartbreak crashes over him as the truth hits. He was never truly independent, and he finally realizes he can do anything on his own. Sunlight bathed the world in cozy warmth, and a gentle breeze soothed the air so much that he almost surrendered to that easy feeling and drifted off without a care. But he snaps upright and shuts that idea down. Alarm hits as he realizes that letting himself get comfortable is the fastest road to becoming useless. So he hardens his resolve and pushes himself to become someone his parents can be proud of. That fresh resolve kicks in and forces him to ask, what can I pull off solo? So he summons his plant encyclopedia, flipping through the new entries, Carmizu, explosion grass, feltoe tree, plus 5 more types. His mind snaps back to the other 5 species, Paropropara, sea flower, lulu grass, mappy grass, and Redruca grass. He flipped through the 5 new plant entries in his encyclopedia, then grimly decided, yeah, they're gorgeous, but they're useless in a fight, more like fancy collectibles than anything that can save him in battle. He thought about trying one, maybe the feltoe tree, but then a wild vision slammed into his mind, a gigantic tree bursting up from the grounds of the Allstream mansion, and the whole place erupted in chaos. In his mind, his parents stared from a balcony, utterly lost, and his mother, remembering his plant-themed gift, urged that they bring him forward. The imagined nightmare turned real when ruffians stormed in, barking for his parents to hand over the boy, like that precious gift was theirs to claim. That terrified outcome locked in his choice for good. He had to test what the feltoe tree could really do. Somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, far away from everyone. That whole train of thought snapped him back to Helio's advice. pushed through about 2 more years of training before stepping into the academy. Then it hit him. Helio, a gift holder like him, probably wrestled with the same doubts, and now he couldn't stop wondering what kind of gift did Helio have. He secretly prayed Helio would reveal it someday. His thoughts kept spinning, eyes locked on the open book, but his mind slipped away to one question. Was Latina okay? Meanwhile, back at her own estate, Latina was getting ready for the academy, grinding hard day after day. Yet there she slumped over her desk, defeated, shouting that it was hopeless because she was totally stuck. She let out a frustrated grumble, puffing her cheeks into a pout because the truth was clear. Nobody was teaching her a single thing. Frustration detonated in her chest. She slammed both hands on the desk and screamed that her father's sword skill was legendary, but training once or twice a month just wasn't even close to enough. She finally went still, tucking her head into her arms with a heavy, defeated stare because she knew her father was tied up. Yet it still stung like nothing. Left was lucky enough to have a swordsmanship teacher who truly showed up. She stares at her life and realizes the truth. Yeah, her grades are flawless, but her sword skills and magic practice are way behind, and the only thing she can do is grind through self-study. This mess traces right back to her father's prejudice. He sneers at commoners like they're beneath him, even though the whole town, his family, the Bee-Venoms, rules is packed with fighters who've got real combat power, and that stuck-up mindset blocks her from finding any worthy teacher there. No matter how hard she insists social status shouldn't matter, her father shuts it down. He refuses to accept that all she has to do is study what's inside her gift to get into, and taking this path would slam the brakes on her dream, graduating from the academy as valedictorian. She freezes, unsure what to do next, and her mind drifts toward the left. A burning, heartfelt wish ignites in her mind. She wants to see you. She remembers the games she played with him, her escape hatch from her strict parents, and her mind snaps back to that huge turning point, the day they received gifts from the creator god. At the ceremony, her blessing lit the whole place up. The crystal ball didn't show one gift, but 3 magic fire eye, magic wind eye, and even swordsmanship too. Everyone went silent, even her own parents, stunned at whether someone could truly carry 3 gifts at once, especially when she'd already been stuck at level 2. Joy flooded her as she clutched gifts for both far-reaching and up-close attacks. Sure, her father would finally light up with pride because a true prodigy had shown up. In that blaze of victory, she swore she'd earned her spot at last. Then she spotted him in the crowd, practically bursting with excitement, and shouted to make sure he'd gotten his gift yet. But the result shattered everyone's expectations when Left got his gift. It was nothing more than a tiny plant sprout. The kid next to him snorted in disgust, saying it was a total disappointment, and that Left's parents had to be devastated. Latina could only freeze, eyes wide, one hand clamped over her mouth. Back in the present, Latina slams into her desk, gripping a bookmark so tight it feels like a lifeline, because she can't stop thinking about how the gods love to toy with her. The trial in front of them is brutal, way harder than anything she ever played as a kid. Still, she steels her heart and tells herself over and over she won't quit. She stood her ground, small fists clenched tight at her side alone, cut off and barred from going out by herself, until the truth hit her hard. She couldn't hunt down a teacher on her own, so she chose the only way forward and marched straight to ask her father. Marching into his study, her father grilled her about her ambition. Did she really want to be valedictorian? She didn't even flinch. Yes. Then she swore she'd be the best and bring honor to their family. And that meant one thing: she needed to level up her combat skills for the next 2 years. Her eyes didn't waver for a second as she threw her heartfelt plea into the air. Please, Father, get me teachers for both magic and swordsmanship. Elsewhere, Latina B. Venom stands beside her father as he gently pats her head. And the truth hits her yearn. Her hands can't carry this alone right now, so she swallows her pride and realizes just how thankful she is to have someone she can actually lean on. Meanwhile, Ulsteria stands in the family garden with frustration flickering across his face, scanning everywhere for a fresh plan to study only to come up empty. And that sting of impatience makes him wish he could grow up already. His search cuts off in the strangest spot right by a bush where he freezes mid-step, eyes popping wide as he spots a quivering, gelatinous mound and realizes it's a slime. He snaps back to everything he knows about the creature, this green slime, rare as it gets, with a semi-transparent, yellowish-green body, then realizes it's harmless to humans because it munches only plants, which is why people even keep it at home as a garden cleaner. He starts wondering if it slipped out of a nearby garden, but one detail hits him hard. There's no slime trail at all. Not even the digest marks it should leave, so he puts the pieces together. Something has weakened it, drained of energy so badly it can't even process food. After wiping out a bunch of goblins just to clear his own way, he finds himself stuck in a weird spot because helping a monster that's harmless feels wrong, doesn't it? Still, he has to figure out how to get it back on its feet, and he quickly realizes herbs won't do a thing to something made of liquid, so he starts thinking a potion might be the only answer. No doubts left in his mind, he whips around and rockets back into the mansion, blasting up the stairs where the head maid, Kira, spots him and blurts his name in stunned surprise. He ignores her completely, dashes to a drawer, and snatches a low-grade potion like it's his only lifeline, then bolts back outside clutching the bottle because he refuses to let her vanish alive right in front of his eyes. But when he storms back into the garden, it's too late. The slime is gone, and now a tiny, sparkling gem sits on the ground where it was. He drops to one knee, snatches the object up, and boom, this emerald-colored, crystal-clear magic stone flashes and sparkles bright in his palm. He raises it high and, in his head, matches it to the goblin's magic stone. Only this one is tiny, the size of a marble, and that wild surprise crashes into him, leaving him totally stunned and lost. He stared at the tiny emerald in his open palm, then it vanished out of nowhere, and his eyes blew wide as it crumbled into fading motes of light. Right in front of him, his plant encyclopedia snapped into existence, hovering in midair with a fresh page open, showing that green slime's picture, and he suddenly jolted as he realized the creature was already logged in his book. A wave of disbelief and pure hype hit him, and he shot a triumphant fist up into the sky. That first rush of joy crashed hard, his eyes flooded as he fought to believe the nightmare could actually be real. He locked eyes on the open encyclopedia, and the words lit up his hope because the records proved it. A monster really had been registered, and this wasn't a dream. A sharp sting on his cheek snapped him back to reality. He remembered how Mayu always brewed his transformation potions, and wondered if some cheap, low-grade stuff would even do the job. He gulped from the tiny vial, and relief hit hard as the pain finally melted away. His thoughts sprinted in circles, hammering out one question. What do they even mean by registration, and what do they really look for? He couldn't shake the gut feeling. It was about body composition. Green slimes might munch plants and feel a little plantish, but they were still monsters to the bone. So when Fire Dragon Strike finally came back, he decided he'd hit them up for their take. Realizing he was totally alone, he grabbed the chance to test what he could do now that the slime was officially registered. Then he practically sprinted to his desk with a fresh rush of purpose. He slumped into his chair at the desk, took a deep breath to calm his nerves, and told himself this process had to work the same way it did when he registered in all those plants. With his encyclopedia flipped open, he shot his hand forward and shouted for the green slime. Then, that familiar drain hit him again, magic power gushing out like it was with plants, while a tiny orb of light started to form right above his palm. He stared in disbelief as the glow gathered itself and turned into a tiny, trembling green slime creature in his palm. And when he held his plant encyclopedia up like a trophy, pure triumph and awe lit his face because he did it. His theory was right. Monsters from his book could really be brought to life, just like plants. The tiny gelatinous creature quivers in place, its body see-through and wobbly like a Mizu Arby Machi dessert. Left locks eyes with the creature, blush burning on his cheeks as it hits him. Somehow, it's weirdly cute behind him. Latina watches, worry in her eyes, wondering if he plans to eat it. He instead is laser-focused on its own well-being. The green slime stretches out a tiny tendril, coaxes it softly and asks, "Are you happy?" And it clearly looks like something's missing. He lets the slime brush his finger with its little appendage, and he can't help but wonder if it's trying to say thanks. Then it hits him. He's suddenly able to feel the slime's emotions, like it's smart enough to actually communicate. He feels this intense bond snapping into place like they're locked in eye contact, even though the creature has no real eyes to look with. Then he pauses, weighs how it could actually help, and blurts that, sure, he's squishy and cute, but he's probably not much use in a fight. So he decides to just enjoy it exactly the way it is. Right when he finishes his thought, the slime suddenly jerks back from his touch, and he and Latina both freeze in shock at the creature's sudden reaction. It keeps leaping across the desk, and Latina calls out, "What's wrong?" Panic hits the left guy hard because what if he accidentally made the slime hate it? A monster shows up to grab the top Latina's head. She snaps her gaze left, fires back. "Were you really trying to fight with it?" And then wonders if there's a way to tweak its mood. Her words hit him like a thunderclap, and he snaps into deep thought, hand on his chin, staring off as he wrestles with what trust is really. He stares at the tiny green creature and decides to name it mostly because it scratches his own curiosity. But as the words hang in the air, he can't stop wondering what happens when he puts a label on something that suddenly popped into existence from his encyclopedia. He leans in with total formality, tells the slime it's tied to the plant encyclopedia, and then declares, "Your name is live now." In a wild little dream, dolls of himself and the Latina throw a joyous celebration, and he can't help but hope that he and Lime will finally have real fun together from here on out. The second the name lands, the plant encyclopedia on the table bursts into a blinding flash of light left frozen mid-step, stares suddenly forgotten, eyes wide as he can't believe what he's seeing. With a shaky breath, he snatches the glowing book and stares. He's never seen light hit this hard, this bright. Then he flips it open and freezes when he spots the label has officially swapped from green slime to lime. It finally clicks in his mind. He sucks in a sharp breath, staring at the encyclopedia page like, "Wait, is this section now only for the line?" He slaps his hand on the book, trying to summon another creature like he predicted. Then nothing happens, and the silence hits like a punch. His suspicion snaps into place after that first materialization. His magic power only dropped by 10, and that's exactly why he's left with nowhere near enough energy to summon again. He thought he could juggle multiple monsters of the same kind, but the truth hits hard. He can only control one at a time. Then his mind sparks with strategy. What if he summons a whole swarm of weak green slimes, and somehow they merge into one brutal powerhouse he can unleash in the middle of a fight? Right as he starts to plot his next move, a brutal jolt of pain rips through his head. He yelps, grabs his temples, and then it hits him hard. Lime can read his thoughts. He sprawls on his bed, flipping through a plant encyclopedia that's somehow opened to a fresh page on Lime, and it looks exactly like his status screen, except it's swapped level for rank and gift for skills. And when he sees Lime's rank sitting there as a pathetic lowly F, his stomach drops. While he keeps sizing it up, he spots the truth. Its HP and MP are both stuck in single digits, and it's got 0 skills to back it up. He gives Lime a playful wink and smugly tells himself, "Yeah, you're pretty weak." The tiny slime quivers, like it just heard its weakness named out loud. Just as he starts thinking he figured Lime would have a skill like a digestion plant, the head-maid Kyra suddenly pops up in his open doorway and snaps, "Dinner time," cutting straight through his focus. The second she spots that slime sitting on Left's head, her professional mask cracks. Kira explodes into a piercing scream, yelling Left's name in panic, while he's just like, "Oh, it's time," and thanks her as if her freak-out totally goes unnoticed. Kyra's fear spikes as Lime slips down her. Less face she gasps, then shrieks that slime is digesting flesh and bone. Sure, the young master's face is about to melt away, and she goes into full panic, shouting for someone to grab a healer. Even with panic clawing at her, he stays unnervingly calm, watching how Lime keeps slipping away from his nose and mouth, like it actually knows what it's doing. When he clocks Kyra's fear, he snaps into action and decides it's the perfect moment to shove Lime right back into the plant encyclopedia. His thoughts snap into focus. He has to find out if storage is even possible, because later he'll need it to register the bigger, bulkier plant-type monsters, sure. He wouldn't mind letting the small slime stay out, but this experiment has to happen. He clenched his will and fired off the command. Brilliant light blasted over Lime as the storage function kicked in, yanking the creature hard back toward the book. Lime burst into a sparkling shower, then vanished right back into the encyclopedia's pages. Kira yelped in pure shock, but Left just stood there, staring as it all disappeared. He whips around to the stunned maid and flashes a warm smile, tells her the storage plan worked, and explains that Lime only digests plants. Then he leans in with a heartfelt apology for scaring her and thanks her for worrying about him. He snaps his command and summons that tiny slime, speaking its name like it's coming home. And the moment it pops into his hands, he blurts out to the shocked Kyra that his encyclopedia can apparently read plant-like monsters too. Then he snaps his focus to the creature, demanding it confirm who it is and asking what it's been through inside the book storage, while Kyra freezes in shock, watching her young master chat with a monster like it's no big deal. That night, inside the Gran Stereo estate, word of a monster lurking sent everyone into a frantic frenzy. His parents, Count and Sylvia Ulstria, gawk with wide eyes as the creature wobbles in front of them, and the Count's composure crumbles as he blurts out if this is just another one of his son's crazy abilities. As the slime jiggles, Left blurts out that it's only getting shy from all the attention. Then his father bursts out laughing at the whole hilariously charming mess, while his mom watches, flustered yet completely hooked. That first jolt fades fast, replaced by pure parental warmth, and the Count beams with relief because his son is clicking with both of them. Later, while strolling through town in his outing clothes, Left clocks the next play he has to make and realizes that boosting his plant-type monster lineup is exactly how he's going to turn the fight in his favor. His search finally spits him out into a shop, then he spots it. The exact thing he needs. He slams a hand down and shouts, "Got it," and asks the shopkeeper to let him buy it. Among all the plant-type monsters out there, the trance stands out because when you finally take it down, it drops a special material so unbelievably light, it's perfect for forging weapons and armor. Clutching that exact material, he slipped onto a quiet, empty street and started an experiment. He poured his focus into the wood, but nothing ignited, and dread sank in. Maybe the material by itself just wasn't enough. He flashes back to how he pulled off Lime with that magic stone, and the realization hits him like lightning. He needs a magic stone, and it has to come from a plant-like monster. So he vows to hunt down several different kinds, test his theory his own way, and try every option he can. He studies the magic stones he already has spoils from goblins he slaughtered, but they do absolutely nothing. He knows these stones are packed with magical essence, basically the power source of this world, like the gadgets from his old life. Still, the market sells them like random junk, and only a guy with an appraisal gift can tell which ones are real, so he makes his choice, skip the guessing, and beat the monster straight up. 1 week later, Left can't stop replaying his quest in his head because the plant encyclopedia gives him zero instructions. So he has to brute force everything through trial and error, even as the trouble fires up his nerves with pure thrill. Just as he's locked in, a voice cuts through the air. "A visitor is here, Helio." From the adventure party, Fire Dragon Strike. He whips around and spots Helio waving from the bottom of the steps. Left beams at him, and Helio strides up, ruffling the kid's hair with pure affection. "Feels like forever," he says, then Left asks what brought him here today. Helio's warm smile flips into pure concern as he tells Left, "I'm here because someone's in serious trouble." Left's expression tightens right along with it, like he instantly gets just how bad this situation really is. He pulls them Left into a room where a woman lies sprawled and unconscious, ringed by bright sunflowers. Leatrice, from their own party, trapped in a deep, unnatural sleep. After Helio lays it all out, Left's face tightens with pure resolve. He nods, says he gets it, and snaps that he'll head out right now, then promises to tell his parents he's leaving. He stomps in with Helio to what looks like their party's headquarters, and before he even fully steps inside, Hiso and Gio swing the door open. Hiso leans in and demands how Helio's meeting went, while Left hang beside Helio, shaken, flustered, and sweating, because the memory of unconscious Leotrice is still burned into his brain. He burst into the adventurer's headquarters and got swallowed in a loud, warm hug from Gladionis, who practically lifted him off his feet, and before the echoes even died down, the boy greeted the big man and shot straight into asking where Leotrice was. His question got answered in the most shocking way. Leotrice was slumped over, dried up and lifeless, while a grotesque, tree-like thing seemed to writhe behind her in brutal agony, left completely frozen in disbelief, as Mayu solemnly explained that Leotrice had caught an extremely serious illness. Alarm hit him, and he snapped that they had to do something right now. Then Mayu slid her hand into his and soothed him, telling him everything would be fine. She said they already had the special medicine they needed, and turned his focus back to Leatrice, announcing that he had arrived at the... When his name hit her ears, the afflicted woman dragged her head up, frame weird as anything, flowering branches bursting from her hair, and with a thin, raspy whisper, she asked if it really was him. She stretched her hand toward the desiccated one, still stunned. It was real, then tears spilled in his eyes as he smiled, swore it was him, and greeted Leotrice with a soft hello. The moment she got that confirmation, her ruined body vanished like smoke, and in its place she erupted back into life, radiant and healthy. Hearing a joyful cry of his name, Leatrice shot forward and crushed the small boy in one overwhelming, suffocating hug. Even with that crushing hug, relief hit him like a wave the second he finally exhaled. Melting into her arms, Mayu watched the whole moment with sharp, thoughtful eyes, then slid her diagnosis to the others. She said it was the leftover deficiency syndrome, and with a bright grin, she announced Leotrice was completely cured. With the danger finally past, he burst in with a grin and declared, "I've got something I need to show you all." His bold declaration lit a spark in the adventurers' minds. Leatrice, Miu, and Helio shot each other curious looks, instantly wondering what that kid was planning. With a proud grin, he summoned his magical gift, the plant encyclopedia floating right in front of him, then planted his hand down, shouted a name, and called forth a creature called Lime. He nailed the summoning spell, and right on the table a tiny, shimmering green slime popped into existence, making the adventurers gasp. Then he grinned like a proud kid and introduced it as Lime, his new family member. The slime wiggled and seemed to answer to its name, and he basically declared, "Surprise, boom, success." Gladiolus burst into laughter, saying the tiny slime was smarter than he was, while Heso's thoughts snagged on something that bothered him. Leatrice and Mayu, though, were completely smitten, cooing over how adorable that little water blob was. While everyone stared in awe at the creature, her eyes snapped wide as it clicked. She practically gasped whether this meant he'd finally found a way to register plant-type monsters. He lit up and confirmed her hunch with a roaring, enthusiastic yeah. She took it all in, eyes widening with pure wonder, and she couldn't help but think this power to recognize creatures like that just blew the whole world wide open. Then he sat down with Hiso and finally admitted the truth. His powers right now were still pretty limited, but he kept his eyes on the future, saying time would sharpen him until he could finally register even stronger monsters. He tossed out an example like, "I could team up with my registered monsters," and just like a classic tamer, the whole idea hit hard. Mayun and Leotrice were clearly blown away, while Gladiolus rubbed his chin, deep in thought. A hard hand snapped onto his shoulder out of nowhere, jolting him. He shot his eyes up, and Helio stared back, dead serious for one. Hiso plops himself across on the left side from Gio, clutching a weird, shriveled fruit, and declares he's got a story to spill. Gio watches him, and Left leans in, eager to hear it. The tale kicks off with a man who could command monsters at will, so powerful that people crowned him the Tamer. He tells us this tamer got insanely lucky, managed to tame an A-rank monster, and that one win blew up his reputation until he sprinted through the ranks and landed at C-tier fast. Meanwhile, Leotrice and Mayu huddle over their futures, and Leotrice flat out warns her taming is usually treated like a dead end, because steering high-rank monsters is brutal, and most can barely manage low-rank creatures. Leotrice says the man in this story had to be insanely talented, and Hiso agrees, claiming the tamer was a master at his craft, then hits you with a dark twist one day. The tamer dies out of nowhere, and Hiso swings around, staring left as he asks straight out, "So what do you think caused his death?" Those unexpected questions jolted him. His eyes flew open wide as the query hit his brain. He snaps back into control in a heartbeat, his face going stone serious as he stares off, thinking hard too many outcomes to count. So he takes a shot. Maybe the tamer crossed the wrong person and got poisoned. His dark, serious theory drops into the room, and Helio, Miu, and Leotrice snap back with comical, wide-eyed stares, while Hiso just points and grins like he can't help it. Still a little flustered, Left blurted out the right answer, admitting he wasn't shocked he'd missed it because his guest didn't have a shred of confidence. Then Hiso just laughed and said that poison was honestly a totally believable play. Then he drops the shocking truth. Turns out the tamer wasn't killed by some big monster at all, but by an arrow from a goblin, A pathetic, lowly F-rank threat. And when that sinks in, Left is left completely stunned and totally unable to speak. He absorbed the brutal lesson in full. If the tamer leaned on his monsters and ignored his own power, even an A-rank beast became worthless the moment he died. Hyso watched the boy finally get it, nodded at the idea of logging monsters in the plant encyclopedia so they could fight at his side. But he wasn't done. There was still a crucial point to hammer home. He kept talking, insisting he wouldn't let Left get crushed by the same fate that swallowed the tamer. And Hyso made it crystal clear, if Left wanted to grow strong for real, his training had to come first. The words hit hard. Left nodded on the spot, finally realizing he'd been mixing things up, even with monsters crowding his life. And if he ever fell, then all of this would have been pointless. His face burst into sincere gratitude, and he spun around to thank Helio for steering him the right way, every time praise so heartfelt it totally caught Helio off guard, leaving him flustered, stammering, while the others watched and grinned at the mess he made. The moment shattered when Leotris slammed both hands on the table, crowding Left's personal space, and blurted that she'd worked hard just like he asked since she was making good on their date, promise? He just stared, completely stunned by how suddenly she took over, and she pressed harder, demanding when he'd finally have a moment right there with her, pinning him down. Left managed to admit it was fine and reminded her, of course, about their agreement. Right before he could even pitch a date, Hyso bulldozed in with an update. Turns out the party just got hit with yet another request, and this one would yank them away for about a whole week, leaving Leotris completely blindsided. Her face instantly crumpled into pure devastation. Everything she'd been waiting for, her date with Left, got yanked off the calendar at the last second. She reeled from the shock, but Mayu's voice came cool and steady from behind. Left work comes first. As Mayu soothed the shaken Leotris by patting his back, she whispered about how brutal life can be for a top-ranked adventurer. And Hyso snapped his focus back to the Left, then he threw him an invitation, asking straight out if the boy would join their upcoming quest. He offered me stunned, he blurted, face blazing with shock and pure thrill. In the blink of an eye, Leotris' sorrow vanished, swallowed by wide-eyed joy at what might come next. Hyso then laid out his plan because their target was right by a plant colony, a rare haven for plant-type monsters, and he saw it as the perfect chance for Left to sharpen his skills and snag brand new allies to tame him. He blurts out that he wants to go, but fear grips him. What if he's just in the way? Then Hyso flashes that knowing smile and tells him, you won't be a burden because they've got a special remedy for anything that could go wrong. Hyso's confidence finally clicks the moment Leotris tumbles onto the floor and pleads with Leftchan to join them. She even calls herself the special remedy. With her desperate plea staring him down, he gives in, then tells Hyso, I get it. He promises to ask his mom and dad for permission, and Hyso hits back. If they say yes, we'll split the quest reward with his. His request got approved way too easily for comfort. Over dinner, Left sits back and realizes his parents actually trust the fire dragon strike like a lot. They cheer him on, tell him to have fun, and warn him to stay sharp as night drapes the Ulfrey estate in darkness. Once he gets the okay, he dives into what he still needs for the expedition, remembering they have already got most of the camping gear, so all that's left is grabbing his own personal stuff. His hard-earned prep pushes him straight into a familiar general store, and when he steps in, the older shopkeeper's eyes light up. She recognizes the blonde boy immediately, and even she's shocked. It's been so long, before confirming he's Helio's friend. He nervously introduces himself and says his name is Left, and the shopkeeper grins like, got it, then leans in to ask if he's come today with more medicinal herbs. The boy straight up tells them, today I'm not hunting, that I'm searching for something completely different. The day he leaves finally crashes in morning light and all, and there stands Left in his travel gear, gripping a huge sack in one hand and his backpack in the other, telling everyone he'll be their problem for the whole week. Then he blurts out, so what do I do with all this? Because someone told him to bring as much luggage as he wanted. Hyso's voice cuts through his worry on the spot, telling him to stop stressing about the cost, because he's already banking on Leotris to take care of the rest. He and Mayu stared in awe as Leotris strode forward with total confidence, telling the young Left to trust her with everything. Then she pointed him to the one thing he'd carry himself, separating his personal luggage from the rest. Left blinked, clearly thrown off, until he recognized Ryatri-san. With a friendly smile, Leatrice reached out and made it crystal clear she'd handle all the rest of his stuff. Left nodded fast, and when Helio asked, he confirmed he'd keep his valuables on him. With a bold shout of readiness, Leotra slams her staff into the ground right in front of Left, and the stunned adventurers, then the thing in front of her completely disappears, leaving everyone blinking and asking if they really just watched it vanish. Helio leans in and asks, Left, so this is the first time you're really seeing my skill? Left nods. He's already clocked it in his head, identifying the phenomenon as her magic void. Iso breaks it down for Lefria has spatial magic, and that's what they use to haul their luggage around. That spatial magic line snaps right into Left's father's attention. He murmurs it like he's tasting the meaning, and the moment Leotrace clocks his interest, she turns toward him. She promises a detailed magic intro one day, and Sylvia, her invitation's mother, snaps it up with pure delight, grinning that she can't wait. For a brief, shared moment, these adventurers get swallowed by a surreal vision, where Leatrice shines like an ethereal star, glowing amid blooming flowers. The dreamy spell shatters. Sylvia grins and tells Lef, this is just Lady Leotrace being Lady Leotrace, while the adventure girl herself strikes a victory pose. Then Heiso steps in and says it's time for them to take off. Hunched inside the rattling carriage, Lef stared out as the trip ahead unfolded. 2 days of travel and camping, a 3-day stop, then 2 more days back, and it hit him hard in his old life. Transport was brutally efficient, because more than half their whole schedule was swallowed up by nothing but the road. The carriage thunders onward, and the town gets swallowed by the distance until it's nothing but a tiny speck on the horizon. As they push deeper into the wilddom, Leotrace snaps a warning monsters get faster, meaner, and far more dangerous out here. Then she leans in and asks Leotrace to help secure the carriage cover, and the driver's blunt comment hits like a punch. Monster attacks aren't rare in this region. He thanks Mayu for cloaking them with her magic, knowing they can't drop their guard for a second, even on the road. She answers with a soft, steady nod, her hand lifting just a little. Right then, the carriage's soothing sway dies out. Mayu snaps first, pointing ahead and yelling that they've stopped. Leatrice confirms it, calmly betting they've run into monsters, then orders Left to stay frozen inside the carriage right as the boy starts to panic. Outside, a hulking pig-headed monster jams the path shut, gripping a massive double-bid Dax, and its guttural roar blasts through the trees. The monster's faces twist into a savage snarl, and their eyes blaze with pure, vicious hatred. From inside the carriage, Left spots the creatures and screams. Orcs, Leechers stays cool and calls them D-rank monsters, assuring him Helio and Gladiolas have this, because right then Helio explodes into action, lunges forward, slams the ground with brutal force, and blasts out a shockwave that ripples through everything. Just as the attack hits his mind, Left snaps awake wide-eyed and realizes the fight is already finished. The carriage jolts forward again and picks up speed. Just like that, Leatrice shrugs and says, of course the whole showdown ended in a blink, while Mayu can't believe how fast those monsters got wiped out. After about 10 grueling hours on the road, Hiso takes the reins and the carriage finally grinds to a stop. Inside, Left reflects, feels crushed that he missed Helio and Gladiola's fight, still baffled how they pulled it off without any clear weapons. Before his thoughts can spiral further, Hiso shouts that they're pitching camp for the night and tells the 3 passengers to hop out and make themselves ready. He steps out of the carriage and holy wow, the world opens up in front of him, a massive grassland stretching to the horizon with not a single building in sight. Leitra grins and says there's water nearby, so this is the perfect spot to rest. As the group sets up camp, Hiso tends to a horse and tells me, before sunset, they've got to get everything ready. He orders her to use her usual magic, and she nods quietly like she's been waiting for his command. Mayu shuts her eyes and clasps her hands, whispering sanctuary bam. A huge shimmering dome of light erupts and blankets their whole campsite, and Left can only stare as Gladiolus grins and says the barrier will shove away any monster ranked 2 or lower, so they can finally sleep easy. Mayu looks genuinely happy that her spell is being appreciated as. When the protective barrier finally settles, another party member steps up and tightens her grip on a long stash, ready to add her piece to the plan. She steps out of a shimmering spatial rift, and it's Leatrice. She blazes forward and declares she's going to grab their luggage right beside her. Gladiolus finally peels off his heavy helmet with a huge exhale, the clasp snapping shut like relief itself. He watches his companions move like pros, Gladiola snapping together the tent, Helio lining up supplies, and heat rushes to the boy's face when he realizes they've done this 100 times. Right as his thoughts start to drift, Hiso whips around and cues dinner, and before he can respond, brightens up, then he steps in and offers to bring the vegetables for the meal. Hiso leaned in, thrilled by the idea, and asked if he'd registered any edible plants, so Lef whipped out his glowing encyclopedia and proudly confirmed he'd added 12 fresh pages of usable flora even as Hiso praised the help. A wave of guilt crept in because he couldn't shake the feeling he was leaning on the child. His worry doesn't even get a second before a shocking confession explodes. Leatrice blushes hard and admits every adventurer in their party is clueless in the kitchen, and Gladiolus awkwardly laughs right along. He lays out their usual meal plan when they're not stuck in an inn. They live on tough trail food made to last, and Mayu jumps in to confirm it, ticking off dried meat and hardtack like it's the daily menu. The boy squints in confusion and asks why Leatrice can't just use her spatial magic to grab freshly made meals from the inns and drop them straight here. Then Leatrice shuts it down, saying her alternate dimension runs on the exact same clock as the outside world, so that easy fix simply won't work. He got it instantly because time flowed like normal inside Leotra's spatial magic, so any ready-made lunches or raw meat would spoil without fail. Hiso caught the boy's face and blurted an apology. Left would have to choke down bland camp meals, but instead of feeling bad, Left's eyes lit up, because this was his shot to pay the adventurers back for their kindness. He spun back to Leotrice and asked politely, but firmly, if she could grab the luggage he'd handed to her, and even with a brief jolt of surprise, she agreed without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, pots, pans, and utensils spilled out of her spatial storage while she proudly held up a ladle and announced that he'd brought every bit of cooking gear for exactly this kind of situation. His bold declaration froze the whole party in stunned silence, and when he saw their faces blank with confusion, he swallowed hard and asked, nervously, for their permission to keep going. With a confident wink, he told them, "Just leave tonight's dinner to me." And when Leatrice heard that, her whole body lit up face-burning as bliss hit hard, because she finally realized Left himself was about to cook her a home-style meal. As the Fire Dragon strike party set up camp for the night, Left frilly apron and all offered to help. Mayu told Gladiolus to go fetch water, and Leotrice asked for permission to cook up dried meat, hardtack, and a fire pit. With the party's nod, Left snatches the lead on cooking. He orders Leatrice to drop the hardtack into a pot, while Hiso checks the flames are locked in. Then Left lays out his plan, simmer the juices from the rehydrated meat for deep flavor, and seal the whole dish with the umami punch of veggies and herbs. He moves like a pro, measures everything, then sprinkles in that last pinch of salt before taking the tiniest taste. Mayu just stares, spellbound by his skill. Next thing you know, he serves up a steaming, hearty soup packed with smoked meat and vegetables, and a crisp, fresh salad dressed with a crushed nut sauce. Leatrice snatches the first spoonful of soup, and the moment the flavor crashes onto her palate, her eyes fly wide with shocked, pure delight. Her reaction blows the roof off. She gushes that the food is so delicious, her cheeks feel like they're about to drop clean off. Gladiolus bellows, "It's insanely tasty," while Hiso can't believe the leaves he ground up turned into such a gorgeous sauce. With a grin, Left serves everyone even more. Iso urges the young cook to grab a bite too, but Left shoots back that he's already taste-tested everything while cooking after their praise. He smiles and hops in, convinced that every last prep step paid off. While they dig in, Hiso suddenly spots the cooking tools from the general store. Left nods and admits pepper cost a fortune, so he leaned on his plant encyclopedia skill to track down the perfect herbs, proving his power isn't just for fighting. After they finish eating, Mayu strides up to Left, eyes sparkling as she gushes about how amazing it all tastes, then asks if he learned to cook at home. Left flashes a bright grin and starts to say he cooked in his last life, then snaps back mid-sentence, realizing he can't spill his secret. Mayu just shrugs it off and accepts his weird answer. He wrestles with memories from his past life, and the moment he died, knowing they're the reason he's still standing in this new world, and he clings to every second he's shared with the adventurers, hoping that bond keeps growing. Then Hiso breaks in, telling him he's run out of time and it's bedtime. Hiso blows him a sweet goodnight, swearing he'll see him tomorrow. Then Left just stands there when Leotris abruptly shouts his name, and the panic on her face doesn't look surprising at all. She beams and snatches Left's hand, telling him he's sleeping in their tent, only for Left to freeze in pure confusion, because to everyone else, he's just a 10-year-old kid. At the tent's entrance, Leotris and Miu were already dressed in their night clothes, waving him over, patting the space between them, and pushing him to come in and crash beside them. He whips his head back in disbelief. Then there's Gio outside, rubbing his nose as he explains that his huge frame makes the other tent way too cramped for 3 people. Left's face goes ghost white, and he starts wondering if this setup is even okay. Then he cuts himself off. That's if 2 women drift into view before him in a gentle, dreamlike mist, and their invitation hits like a seductive summons to slip into a forbidden garden of secrets. Outside, the campsite glows under a bright full moon, calm as can be, while inside one tent, chaos is already bursting out. Stiff as a statue between them, he's got the whole room filling up with this sweet scent, and on the left, his face burns as the truth hits. There's no way he can cool off enough to fall asleep. Sensing Left's restlessness, Leotris whips around with a teasing grin and asks if he's getting sleepy. Left freezes, startled, and can only sputter that he's not really tired yet. His reply makes it clear she isn't sleepy either, and I can't help but speak up. Before the moment slips away, Leotris grabs the opening and pushes for the 3 of us to talk for a while. His eyes blow wide and panic slams him in the chest, trapped with zero escape in sight, while his mind scrambles, begging to know what they're even about to talk about. Leaning in, and Leotris drops her voice and whispers about a girl's bedroom night, grinning like she knows exactly what she's doing, and the moment Left hears it, his heart goes berserk. His cheeks ignite with a full-body blush as he blurts out a frantic protest. "I'm a boy.